Good evening and welcome to the 30-minute drill. This is our 21st show we're bringing to you. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Matthew, the Employee of the Month, Taylor. We have college hoops action. Sweet 16 has come through us. 2 rounds finished with the NCAA tournament. Big name has been upsets. A lot of great games in the tournament thus far. And it has been upsets because there's been a lot of high-seeded teams that have been losing to teams that a lot of people have never heard of, notoriously. Kansas losing to Bradley in the first round, but that's just one of the many games. We're not even going to get to that game because we're not covering that bracket today. But we're going to start it off with the Atlanta bracket, previewing the Sweet 16. Duke takes on LSU. What are your thoughts on this game, and how has it been for these two teams thus far in the tournament?
Well, I think it's going to be a really competitive game. You got LSU. And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis. And it's going to be who's going to wear down each other first. Now, you know Glenn Davis, around 315 pounds. He used to tank inside. Sheldon Williams of late has just been unstoppable. And the key's going to be, like every game, is J.J. Redick and his threes. And I think that if he's off, LSU has a legit chance to win this game.
Oh, I think it's going to be an excellent match. I mean, it's going to be a great matchup because you look at the size, Sheldon Williams against Glenn Davis. It's there. But thus far in the tournament, Sheldon Williams has played excellent. He's really stepped up his game, and so has J.J. Redick, who was in a shooting funk at the end of the season. He's come out of that. So these two if they're carrying the team, they can definitely win this game. West Virginia Mountaineers, they take on the Texas Longhorns. What is your thoughts on this game?
Well, my concern going into the tournament was that West Virginia was playing really awful ball. And in the first two rounds, they're really playing solid. I mean, they haven't played the greatest competition in the world. But it's always good to have a little momentum going into a big game like this versus Texas. Earlier in the year, West Virginia lost a heartbreaker to Texas. They missed 3 one-on-one opportunities late in the game, and Texas capitalized on it. And I think that the key is, can Kevin Pittsnow stop LaMarcus Aldridge? And what's Frank Young going to do on Brad Buckman? So I think that on the perimeter, West Virginia will be able to contain these Texas guards, but it's going to be inside what they're going to be able to do.
Now, Aldridge, who has been playing exceptionally well in the tournament, Pittsnogle's been playing well too. How is the matchup right now? I mean, does Pittsnogle have the edge?
Well, 2 totally different styles. You got Aldridge. He likes to play inside the post. Everyone knows about Pittsnogle, just really a great shooter from the outside. And the difference is when West Virginia runs that 1-3-1 defense, it kind of takes out that post game. But I think that West Virginia is going to have to front him and then put a guy behind him because they have no guy that could physically match with him.
Now, Mike Gansey, who got injured in their last game for the Mountaineers, do you see this injury affecting him in this game against Texas? And if it does West Virginia have a chance at winning this game?
Well, I'll say in general in the whole season, Mike Gansey's been more tentative, and I think that he should really attack the basket more. And I think that in order for them to win this game, he's going to have to attack the basket, draw defenders, and maybe dish off to the big guys. So I think that Gansey's really got to be on top of this game in order for the Mountaineers to win.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and especially when you have an outside shooting team like the Mountaineers, they're going to have to make the majority of their shots, otherwise they're not going to win. Now, we're going to go back to the Duke game because we kind of sped through that a little bit. I just wanted to bring up the point. Greg Paulus has stepped up really big in this tournament. His turnovers have been down and his assists have been increasing. Do you see if Paulus continues his solid play, does Duke go all the way in the tournament?
Well, you look at all great teams, and they're all known, and they always have solid point guards. Now, you don't have to have an all-star, but you just have to have someone that can get the job done, keep the turnover to assist ratio pretty presentable, and that's what Greg Paulus has done this whole season. Now, yes, he still is a freshman, but I think that he knows what his role is and that he's going to be one of the keys if Duke wants to advance in the tournament.
Now, now we're going to just do predictions now. Duke versus LSU. What is your prediction for this game?
Well, I like LSU by 3 in this one. I think that Glenn Davis is just going to have a great day. Tyrus Thomas, the guy was injured earlier in the season, and now when you're watching the guy in the tournament, it's just an unbelievable athlete.
Well, I disagree. Duke's going to win this game. Now, West Virginia plays Texas. If the Mountaineers step up and make their shots, actually, just what's your prediction for this game?
I'm going to go with the Mountaineers in this one. I think that Kevin Pittsnow is going to have a big day. We all know that West Virginia, they had the experience in the tournament last year going to the Elite Eight, actually should have beaten Louisville. And I think that the Mountaineers are going to edge this one by 5.
Yeah, I would like to see the Mountaineers win this game just because I like to see some of these upsets happen. But I think because DeMarcus Aldridge, he has just been so clutch in the tournament so far, and just his size advantage, it gives them an extra edge, Texas. We'll be back with more 30-minute drill covering the Washington bracket and Minneapolis bracket. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill. We're going to be previewing the Washington bracket now with two games. Andrew Gayo, Matthew Taylor. UConn taking on the Washington Huskies. This is actually the matchup of the Huskies. Both mascots contain them. How do you see this game playing out? Because UConn, obviously, the number one seeded team in this bracket, but they really have not been playing well. They did not play well against the 16 team Albany, and they were a little shaky last game. How do you see this game?
Well, you look at UConn, and they're clearly the favorite in this matchup, but they really have not been playing very well. And I think it pretty much starts with their two inside guys, Hilton Armstrong and Josh Boone. Now, if one's playing well, it seems like the other is slacking or in foul trouble. Now, in order to get past Washington, who's a very dangerous team, they need both those guys to step up. Marcus Williams pretty much been playing out of this world of late. Rudy Gay, he has all the potential in the world, but he's pretty much got to step up. Now the expectations are getting a lot higher, getting deeper into the tournament, and big-time players got to make big-time plays. And going to Washington, the key, like every game, is going to be Brandon Roy. What's he going to be able to do versus pretty much a solid UConn defense? Obviously, the nation in shot block, so I'm looking for a very interesting game.
Yeah, Rudy Gay is definitely the X factor for the UConn Huskies because he's been inconsistent in this tournament. Actually, he's been inconsistent the whole season. He's really had a down year, I guess you could say, because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them this year at least. And on the Washington side, Brandon Roy, if they're going to win, he has to play well because the reason they won the Illinois game is because Brandon Roy made his shots at the end, and it basically came down to D. Brown didn't, the star player for the Illini. But UConn, I see them winning this game just because they're so big inside, and they have the experience, obviously, from 2 years ago, some of these players on this team. So I'm going to have to give the edge to UConn. Second game in this bracket, George Mason versus Wichita State. Two teams that weren't even expected to go this far in the tournament. Upsetting teams to get into here. Who do you see in this game? And if the winner of this game, they advance to the Elite Eight, how far has that team come?
Well, I actually like Wichita State in this game. I mean, I really can't talk about this team in detail, but I'll talk about when they played Tennessee. Tennessee really a smaller team, and you saw that Wichita State was able to take advantage of that. And talking about a little bit of George Mason, the first two rounds they had to play Michigan State and North Carolina. As tough of a route to get to the Sweet 16 as you're going to find. And pretty much the advantage they had was they had this big guy, Lewis, that was just big body inside, and he was able to shut down Paul Davis and Tyler Hansbrough. But I think that Wichita State's going to just be able to edge him out at the end.
Because Wichita State has definitely they've come a long way. I mean, beating the North Carolina Tar Heels, who a lot felt that even though they were a young team, they got very far in the tournament considering their experience that they've really been lacking. Wichita State, they definitely have the sharpshooters to make it this far. And George Mason, I mean, nobody even heard of these teams. I just got to give them credit because they played in mid-major conferences and they found ways to get here, and not only to get into the tournament, but to actually win some games in the tournament to make names for themselves for maybe the future of the program. Now we're going to get to the prediction time. UConn, Washington, who do you pick in this game?
Well, like UConn, I think that Hilton Armstrong is really going to have a big day. I think that UConn's going to be able to shut down Brandon Roy. They got so many guys they can bring off the bench and the size. I like UConn by 10.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take UConn in this game just because if Washington, they have to rely on Brandon Roy because if he's not doing well, that team's not going to do well, and they're not going to win this game if Roy does not step up. And UConn just has so many weapons on this team that they have the potential to beat anybody on any given day if they play their A game. George Mason, Wichita State. Who do you take in this game?
Well, I like the Shockers of Wichita State. I think that it's going to be really a buried game, yet they're going to be able to keep it close. And I think it's going to be a really competitive game, even though the audience is probably going to be close to 0. I like Wichita State by 5.
It is going to be quite unfortunate, even if the attendance is not there, just because these two teams, they've come a far way. Sweet 16. I mean, figure, George Mason was not even supposed to get this far. They were supposed to lose to, I believe it was, help me out here, it was Michigan State, correct? Yeah, they lost to Michigan State. And Wichita State, well, they beat Seton Hall. Seton Hall obviously was not that great of a team. But then in the second round, they beat the Volunteers of Tennessee, and that was a big win because not a lot of people saw that game being even close. So obviously these two teams have come a far way, and whoever wins this game, congratulations to them, because to go to Elite Eight and not even be a known team, that's a great accomplishment. We'll be back with more drill after this. We're going to be covering the Minneapolis bracket. Don't go away. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week. We're going to be talking about the Minneapolis bracket now. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew the Lawnmower Taylor. Now we've got first game to discuss. Villanova plays Boston College, a game in which this is basically a very nice matchup. Boston College seeded at number 4, Villanova the number 1 seed. Very balanced, these two teams at both positions, at all positions, you could say. The big man matchup and the guards matchup. What is your intake on this game, and who do you think is going to come on top?
When you look at this game, man, it's two totally different styles. You got Villanova, they go with the 4 guards that they start, and also Will Sheridan. And then you got Boston College. It seems like even their guards play like forwards inside. Craig Smith, really a force inside. Jared Dudley, one of the best players that could do it all for you. But the difference is that how is Villanova going to rebound with Boston College? Now, we see BC rebounding with teams that are much bigger than Villanova, and I think that Villanova is going to have to run a full court press. We know that Boston College's weakness is their guards, so I think that this is going to be a very interesting game.
Now, you brought up a good point, bringing up how they have to, not only with the full court press, but they're going to have to spread the ball because basically Villanova has no, besides Sheridan, they do not have an inside presence down low for them running that 4-guard set. Do you compare the scheme that Coach Jay Wright runs to the one 2 years ago with the St. Joseph's team when they had Jameer Nelson and Delonte West?
Well, I think it's someone like that. I mean, you look at that St. Joe's team, and that was more of a 1-2 show. Now you look at this Villanova, now you could say it's a more 1-2-3 with Allen Ray, Randy Foy, and Kyle Lowry, who is only 6 foot. He's usually the shortest guy in the court, yet he's in there rebounding with the trees inside. So I think that, yeah, you can compare that to that team, but I think this Villanova team has a little more talent.
Yes, I totally agree because it was a 2-man show basically back then for the St. Joseph team. Also, St. Joseph's, they played in the Atlantic 10. This Villanova team plays in the Big East. Obviously, the competition at a different level. No disrespect to the Atlantic 10. But with this game, do you think if Villanova can get inside and at least get close to the same rebounding numbers as Boston College, they will win this game? I mean, they're already favored.
Oh, yeah, I think that if Villanova could even keep it within a differential of 5 rebounds in the game, maybe even 10, that Villanova will win this game. It seems like every time they take a 3, it goes in. And you look at this Villanova team, and I'll take you back to last year, without Curtis Sumter also, they gave North Carolina a really big scare in the tournament. So we know the caliber of talent that this team really has.
Now we're going to swing into the other game that's going on in this bracket. Georgetown, the number 7 seed, coming off the upset of Ohio State. They are playing. Who are they playing, Matt? I'm losing my memory.
Well, we got Georgetown, Florida.
Georgetown, Florida. My bracket's all messed up, so I forgot that Florida was still in the tournament. But no, so Georgetown, Florida. Florida have been playing well in this tournament. They were played well during the beginning of the season. Then towards the end of the season, they started to slow down a little bit. This Georgetown team, ever since they beat Duke, they've kind of caught fire. They played at a different level. They're a very big team. How do you see this game?
When you look at Florida, and many people doubted them, you look at the old teams that it seemed like they were always a seed around the 4 or 5, and they had a lot of talent, and they always went out early in the tournament. And they look at this team, totally new roster. I don't think it's anyone from the teams that lost early in the tournament, and they're playing as well as any team in the whole tournament and their bracket specifically. They look at Georgetown. John Thompson's team really is playing tremendous. Roy Hibbert in this tournament has just been superb. So I think that the key is going to be if Florida could stop the interior presence of Georgetown.
Now, I believe that Florida, who not a lot of people has, praised their inside presence, they've really stepped it up in this tournament, playing a lot of big men, posting good matchups. But this Georgetown matchup is totally different when you have a 6'11" guy and a 7'2" guy down there. How do you see this looking out for Florida, and if they stop them, will they win this game?
Well, once again, the key is going to be if Georgetown's guards hit that 3s, it could be a long day for Florida. So I think that they might have to play a little zone defense just to maybe contain the inside guys at Georgetown, and you're going to allow some open threes, but you just got to hope that guys like Ashante Cook don't put the shots down.
Yeah, absolutely, because Ashante Cook, he's a very streaky shooter for Georgetown. He's in that Duke game he was making every shot. I remember that because J.J. Redick was covering him, and it seemed that every time Cook got the ball, he would put it into the bottom of the net. In this game, do you see Georgetown playing up another upset and then going to the Elite Eight?
Well, at this point in the tournament, I really wouldn't even consider this that big of an upset. I mean, go seeding-wise, yes, it is an upset, but the way that Georgetown's playing is really tremendous. We know how much talent they have, and it seems like it's all young talent as well. I don't think they have many seniors on this ball club. So I think that Georgetown, a very streaky ball club, but if they play to their caliber, they could win this game.
Now, I need a potential score for this game. What do you say?
Well, I don't know the exact score, but I think that Georgetown's going to play solid again. I know Florida's been playing as well as they have all season, but I think that Georgetown's going to pull it off by 3.
I'm going to say 88-79 Georgetown. Boston College Villanova game score winner.
I like Boston College in this one by 5. I think too much interior force.
Yeah, I'm saying Boston College. They're actually in my Final Four. I'm taking them. They're probably going to win by, I would say, 5 to 10 points. Thanks for joining us. More with Drill after this.
Welcome back to the Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Today we're going to preview the Oakland bracket. The Bradley Braves had the biggest upset of the NCAA tournament so far, first knocking off Kansas and then beating Pittsburgh to advance to the Sweet 16. However, the Bradley Braves been able to do this.
Well, everyone thought that Kansas would go into the Elite Eight, but I don't think Kansas is that very good of a team. They lost to Bucknell last year. They lost to Bradley this year. They beat Pittsburgh. They were a good team, Pittsburgh, a really good team. I have no idea how they upset Pittsburgh. But Kansas, they are not a good team at all.
Why do you think everyone expected them to make it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four?
Because they were seated low, and everyone, like the people they just pick. Most of the people they pick, the people that are seated low, the teams, but.
Well, Andrew, Kansas was the Big 12 tournament. That's why everyone was picking them to do well. I know they're a young team and they were inexperienced, but they played great in the Big 12 tournament. They beat Texas. People thought that they overcame their sort of getting over the hump, so they got over the hump. Yeah. That's why they picked Kansas. And you can't think of last year when you're picking this stuff. Sure, Kansas lost to Bucknell last year, and I know they choked again this year in the first round, but you can't look at that stuff when picking. I mean, last year, North Carolina won the whole thing, and this year lost in the second round. So you can't look at that stuff. But anyway, Bradley really played well. They got off to a big lead against Kansas. They never looked back. When Kansas started to close the gap in the second half, Bradley kept shooting well. They forced turnovers. They got out in the fast break, and they scored a lot of points. Basically the same thing against Pittsburgh. They really played well. They weren't afraid of playing the better and tougher Pittsburgh team. But you have to give credit to Bradley. No one expected them to go this far, and this is like the first time in 55 years they're in the Sweet 16.
So now Bradley's in the Sweet 16. They're playing Memphis. Who do you think wins?
Memphis. Bradley's not going to pull another upset against this Memphis team. Memphis, they have been playing very well, and apparently they beat Pittsburgh and Kansas, but this Memphis team is going to be too much for them.
I think Memphis is going to. When I thought Memphis would lose in the Sweet 16 to Kansas originally, but Memphis has really had a cakewalk in their first 2 games. They've really played well. They're really coming together. Everyone is shooting really well. Darius Washington is leading this team, playing very well on offense. Defense has played great. That's been the big difference for Memphis. Their defense has really played well, and defense with a good combination of offense wins in March. So I think Memphis will march on and move on to the Elite Eight, and I think Bradley's run will end.
The second Sweet 16 game is UCLA versus Gonzaga. Who do you think will advance to the Elite Eight?
UCLA Bruins, they will beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga beat Indiana. That was a tough loss for me. But UCLA, they're a much better team. Gonzaga, they have Adam Morrison. I don't think he's like a one-man team. The UCLA Bruins, they will beat and they will advance to the next round.
Yeah, I know. Going back to what you were talking about with Indiana, the brother of Andrew Axelband, Larry Axelband, is a diehard Indiana Hoosiers basketball fan. I know he was crushed when they lost to Gonzaga on Saturday. I'm sure he was really happy that they beat San Diego State. But anyways, Indiana, they had a good year. considering the beginning of the year where they didn't play well, but they came on hard at the end. They played hard for Mike Davis, and you gotta give those Hoosiers a lot of credit. Anyway, I think UCLA will win their Sweet 16 game against Gonzaga. I like Gonzaga. They played well against Indiana, even though Adam Morrison didn't play well. They had guys step up like Batista, but I don't think Gonzaga will have enough to beat UCLA. UCLA has played really well. They're really athletic. All of the players on their team can really shoot the ball. And I just think UCLA is going to beat Gonzaga because they don't have enough. Gonzaga does not have enough scoring punch besides Adam Morrison and Batista.
Andrew and Dave, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next segment on The Drill.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Andrew Axelband. Today's guest, Ryan Dubin, Dave Suntup. Now we're going to talk about the NFL and the free agency. There's a lot of big moves that happened. Terrell Owens has landed in the Big D. He has signed a 3-year contract with the Cowboys. Can T.O. control his emotions? And how much better does he make the Cowboys?
I mean, it was definitely a risk for Dallas to make. But, I think T.O. learned a lesson. He's still the same guy he was, but I think he's just going to control himself a little better. I don't see the Eagles situation happening again. And I think that the Cowboys are going to be great this year. They're going to obviously have another big threat on offense. And that's it.
Well, do you think the Cowboys are a playoff team in that tough NFC East?
No, still no.
It's probably too early to determine. You have to see what the draft says. But anyways, to answer your question, Andrew, well, it's a great move for Dallas. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 1996. They really haven't done much since then, and they need a spark on offense. Drew Bledsoe got a lot of help from T.O. He's one of the top 3 receivers in the NFL, so it's definitely a great move. He's clutch. He catches a lot of touchdowns. He's good over the middle. But when it comes down to it, can he control his emotions? Will he alienate his teammates? That's the question to be asked. Yeah. He did that in Philly. He did that in San Francisco. He alienated coaches. He ruined locker rooms. And the first year he may be okay, but after that, if they start losing, him and Drew Bledsoe, I think will have a lot of fights because Drew Bledsoe got in Keyshawn's face last year. Drew Bledsoe is not afraid of anyone, so I could see him and T.O. getting into arguments because Donovan McNabb is a better quarterback than Drew Bledsoe, in my opinion. Drew Bledsoe has a better arm than McNabb, but McNabb is a better quarterback. So I think T.O. was spoiled by playing with McNabb.
Yeah, and also T.O. When he scored a touchdown, he went to the Stars. And the Star, and he placed them all, and the guy ran him over.
I still can't believe he's playing for Dallas. It's basically a joke, but he doesn't put him over the top because they still need offensive line help. They still need a constant running back. And I don't think Drew Bledsoe's that good of a quarterback anymore, and their defense is spotty.
All right, next question. The Vikings traded Anthony Culpepper to the Dolphins for a second-round pick. Do you agree with the Vikings' move to trade Anthony Culpepper? And is he the QB that can take the Dolphins back to the playoffs?
Well, Miami definitely got the better half of the trade on this one. The Vikings, I think they made a decent move. Brad Johnson, he's a good quarterback. He's a solid quarterback. He led them, to some victories last year. And Miami's looking for a spark on offense. And maybe Dante Culpepper will connect with Chambers, wide receiver, and maybe something will happen.
Well, Dubin, Brad Johnson, we know he had a good year last year, but a couple years ago at Tampa, he started to decline. Do you think he's for real? Do you think he could have another good year?
I could see him having another good year this year, but as far as the future in another several years,
they'll probably need someone younger.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really good trade for the Dolphins. They gave up a second-round pick, only a second-round pick for one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL when he's healthy. I mean, a couple years ago, they gave up a second-round pick for A.J. Thiele, someone who played 5 games in Philly, and while he had a good record, he wasn't really proven because he played against bad teams. Yeah, it was just a terrible trade. So it's basically a bargain for the Dolphins. They've had trouble finding a good quarterback. Last year for he was inconsistent, but sometimes he played well, sometimes he didn't. Then I have Culpepper. He's really good on the run. He could scramble. He's really tough. He could pick up the tough yards on the run. He could throw a ball deep. He's really improved his accuracy. I think it's a great trade for Minnesota. A great trade for Miami.
Yeah, this was a really good pickup for.
Well, do you think it puts them into the playoffs, guys?
No, they
I don't know. I think it could. If Culpepper's healthy, I think they're a playoff team.
If he plays well all through the season, they have a chance. But if he doesn't, then he'll have to work.
This is a team that got a lot better during the year last year. I believe they finished 8-8. So I think they're a playoff team.
All right. Edgerrin James has left the powerhouse Colts for the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have really struggled on offense, in the past couple of seasons, and they have not made the playoffs in almost 8 years. Does the addition of edge make the Cardinals a playoff contender?
I definitely still don't see the Cardinals making the playoffs. I know that they're obviously going to have another weapon on the offensive side. Edgerrin James is just a great player, so it's definitely going to help them.
It's definitely going to help the Cardinals because they've never had a good running back before, but now they have a running back. They have balance in the passing game. They have Larry Fitzgerald. They have Kurt Warner. So I like what the Cardinals have, but they still need offensive line help, and they still need defense help. But definitely a good signing by the Cardinals. And I don't know what Edge is doing by going to a losing team, but hey, maybe he'll turn them around.
All right, thanks, guys.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season, and I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
in America, you know, he is a citizen here, so, you know, it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
Say because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this.
Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the 30-minute drill. We'll be recapping the national championship game when Florida defeating UCLA 73-57, 2006 national champions, the Florida Gators. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew the Cardboard Box Taylor. Now, what did you see of this game, and how did Florida fare in the whole tournament?
Well, you look, and the inability for UCLA to score from the inside and on the out really affected them. Now you look, and Aaron Aflalo, really a highly regarded player, and whenever I saw this guy play, he just simply didn't do anything for me. Now you look at Jordan Falmar, another highly recruited player. This guy is just simply a great talent. Now switch it over to Billy Donovan's ball club. They really had an even balance and so much offensive power, but the key in this game was their defensive power and how UCLA couldn't get open shots. And even on the interior, Ryan Hollins, ineffective. This guy, Motto, maybe the worst player in college basketball history. So it was just an all-around bad effort for UCLA.
Yeah, it was, because it certainly wasn't their best effort, because we've seen games, notoriously the Elite Eight game versus Memphis, where they came out and basically just shut down that Memphis team. Darius Washington Jr. could not get anything started for that game, and it just showed that defense can carry out into many wins. I mean, they got to the championship game based on their defense. What team does this UCLA team remind you of defensive-wise, like history?
Oh, I can't even remember any of late. You look at the last two national champions, and you got North Carolina. They really didn't even play much defense. And look at the Connecticut team from the previous year, just one of the best defensive teams I've seen recently. They had Emeka Okafor in the middle. And UCLA, it seemed like they just couldn't stop the interior game, and they were just playing volleyball on the boards, especially when Ryan Hollins got in foul trouble. Then they had so much size advantage. Noah's 6'11", those long arms. It seemed like he was getting every rebound. So it seemed like they were just outclassed pretty much, UCLA.
Now, Mr. Joaquin Noah, you mentioned 6'11", big man in the middle. How did his effective play in this tournament bring Florida to a different level?
Well, related directly to the LSU Duke game, J.J. Redick would break down his defenders, but when he got to the middle, every shot would be swatted off the glass, and then it would lead to a fast break. Now you look at Noah, he alters pretty much every shot that comes into the lane, And if he's not there, Al Horford really was a tremendous presence inside. And you look at UCLA, they got some pretty good shooters on their team, but they like to play a little backdoor cut games and like to get the ball into the middle of the Hollins. But whenever he got the ball, he'd be double teamed, and that would lead to turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely. This game basically was, I mean, Florida, they obviously dominated this game. Now, I want to go into a little more of the tournament, basically. Just some quick response questions here, and you can follow them up. But biggest disappointing team in the whole tournament?
Well, you always look and you always relate to the number one seeds that got knocked out early. And most people say when a team makes it to the Sweet 16, the season is not a failure. But you look at Duke, the season was a failure for them. They had 2 All-Americans on their lineup, Sheldon Williams, J.J. Redick. And you looked at the last 10-game stretch, J.J. Redick was just not the Redick that we saw for the previous 3.5 seasons. So I think that Mike Krzyzewski's ball club really was a disappointment.
Me and him will be right back in a couple of moments. We're going to be talking about Major League Baseball. It's back. Don't go away. Konnichiwa. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week. We're going to be talking about Major League Baseball. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew Oscar Taylor now. New season, fresh beginnings. We're going to be talking about the American League because I believe David Suntup's group is talking about the National League. So the American League, let's look at each division. First division, the American League East. First, we'll start off with the Yankees. It looks like they're going to, preseason prediction, maybe finish off the AL East pretty strong, win the division. How do you see this AL East division?
Well, you look at the Yankees, and that's the first team that comes to mind when you think of a team that legitimate has a chance to win the World Series. And it's been that for the last few seasons, and they just come up short. And you look at this year, once again, it's an all-star lineup. You have Robinson Cano hitting 9th. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Well, like most teams in the American League and the whole major leagues, the X factor is going to be pitching. Now, last year, they were bringing guys in, taking them out throughout the whole season. So if you're a Yankee fan, you got to hope for a very good, solid, healthy pitching staff. And the bullpen, you know, it's always going to be a coin toss besides Mariano Rivera. You know that he's always going to be there when you need him. But the middle relief is always going to be key for the New York Yankees. Now let me throw it over to the Boston Red Sox. They might have lost a little power in the offseason. And I think that they're always going to be a contender in the AL East. It's always going to come down to the last 2-3 weeks of the season versus the Yankees. So I think that these teams right now are the 2 front runners for the AL East.
Yeah, absolutely, because we're actually going to have one segment, particularly on the Yankees, coming up after the next Scott Man's World commercial, but we're going to preview more of the American League since we're on a time base here. Yes, good point mentioned. Boston Red Sox, they did lose a little power, losing Damon especially to the rival Yankees. That's definitely a subtraction for the Red Sox, but a great addition for the Yankees. Toronto Blue Jays making great notorious, a lot of moves in the offseason, helping out their pitching staff, helping out the lineup, Lyle Overbay, A.J. Burnett, B.J. Ryan, just some of the names that have been signed to this Blue Jays ball club. But it's not always about signing big people, it's also about chemistry. How do you fare that these Blue Jays go?
Well, surely the Blue Jays have gone much better this season, and it seems like they've loaded big-name players. But you look, the Yankees have all these big-name players, and what have they won the last few seasons? And I think that contending in the division with the Yankees and the Red Sox, when you have to play them, 18 times per year, it's always going to be tough to contend in the division with them. And they got to make sure that they beat the teams they should beat, the Orioles and the Devil Rays.
Yeah, due to the unbalanced schedule, between the two teams, they have to play the Red Sox and the Yankees 38 times total. So basically, they're going to have to win those games if they want to have a shot at the division. Baltimore Orioles, they're looking basically like the same old Baltimore Orioles, but minus B.J. Ryan. Now they have Chris Ray as their closer. How do you see the Orioles faring this year?
Oh, they might just be another beat-up team with just a little more talent. They still got some star players on this ball club, and they'll win a few games. They'll be a little below 500. But like I said before, competing in the AL East is so difficult. And the way that it's just loaded this year at the top, I really don't see the Orioles having much of a chance to contend in this division.
Yeah, quickly now, the Devil Rays, I'm not even going to talk about them. They're the stellar team now. American League Central, we got the White Sox, the Indians, the Detroit Tigers, and we got the Kansas City Royals, Minnesota Twins as well. Who do you see faring on top of this division?
Well, you know, the White Sox right now, you can say they're going to have a letdown season, but when you have solid pitching, it's really difficult for a team to have such a drastic drop. Now, I think that the White Sox are going to win this division, but we all saw towards the end of last season the Cleveland Indians really were playing excellent ball. They're getting so much offensive production from guys that 2 years ago no one even heard about. So I think that this race may go down to the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, my prediction, quite frankly, I think the Indians, it's going to be a race, but I think the Indians are going to just pull ahead just because I think the White Sox, I think they're going to break down. I think Jim Thome is very overrated. I think it's a good signing, but I don't think he's a player that he used to be. Quickly, the American League West predictions, I'm going to say the Oakland Athletics.
Oh, I like the Angels in this division. I think that they are the most balanced team in the American League. They got pitching. They got probably hands down the best relief in the baseball. K-Rod really one of the elite closers in the league. And I think that the A's, the pitching's there. It's always been there. But where's the hitting going to come from? They improved this season, but when it's all said and done, you can't be scoring 2-3 runs a game and winning the AL.
Yeah, that's going to be basically the factor for the A's. If they want to get to the playoffs, they're going to have to hit consistently, and we all know the pitching's there. They just have to rely on consistency. That's always been the A's problem. Wild card prediction.
Well, I think the Cleveland Indians are going to win it. I think that they're going to be around that 90-win mark, maybe even more. I think that they're another very well-balanced ball club, and they're going to be there when it's all said and done.
And to cap it off, American League pennant winner.
I like the New York Yankees this year. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm always going to stick with my team. I think this year they're going to get over the edge. When it comes to the World Series, who knows? It's always going to be a coin toss.
I'm going with the Yankees of New York. And speaking of which, we will be back in a couple moments talking about that team from New York. We'll be back. Hello, welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week. And now we're going to be talking about the New York Yankees. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew, the Giraffe Taylor now. So the Yankees, right, 1-2 right now, new season to start off. New team, a lot of great additions in the offseason. Johnny David, notoriously the best one. How do you see the Yankees faring just so far?
Well, when you look at the New York Yankees, they got really an all-star lineup. When the lineup has Robin Cano in the 9 hole, you really know you have a solid lineup. But in the last few seasons, the inconsistency, I should say, has been the pitching staff. Now this year, it seems like they improved a little bit in the bullpen. Mariano Rivera, he's always going to be there as long as his health is up. But it's always going to be the starting pitching. If they can get the game into the 8th and 9th inning, it's always going to be lights out once Mo comes in.
Well, the quintessential part of this team obviously is the pitching, because in looking the years past when the Yankees were winning World Series, they had the Cone man, David Cone, they had David Wells, they had Andy Pettitte, and they always, even Jimmy Key back in a long time ago, but you know, they had pitching all around, and the bullpen too, to support Mariano Rivera. They had Jeff Nelson when he was in his prime, Mike Stanton, Jason Grimsley, all these role players were standing up. And now in previous years, it seemed that the Yankees have always tried to get big star names, and they really wouldn't adapt to the chemistry in New York. So if the Yankees want to succeed this season, they're going to have to rely on experience and chemistry, because they have proven just by the past 5 seasons that big name players are not equal champions. Don't you agree?
Well, when you look, I'm going to point right to A-Rod, and most Yankee fans are going to say, well, since A-Rod's come to town, the Yankees have won a World Series. And I think that when it comes playoff time, the guy's simply not a clutch player. Now you look at Derek Jeter, the success he's had in the past, and ever since he's come to the Yankees, when there's a game on the line, you want Derek Jeter at the plate. So I think that the Yankees, they really got to find components of big game players. When they made that run from 96 to 2000, they had pitchers that when it was a Game 7, all our pitchers you knew could pitch clutch in those games.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good point, because back to your point about Jeter and A-Rod, everybody thought when we got A-Rod that it was the next piece, that now that we got A-Rod, we're going to go to a different level, and we're just going to continue with the championships. But we look at Mr. Rodriguez's numbers over the postseason the past 2 years that he's been here in 2004, 2005. He has not stepped up to the clutch. Last year, hitting 121 in the playoffs, hitting into a double play in the 9th inning against the Angels last year in a crucial situation. And as we look at that inning, Jeter led off the inning with actually he's kept the inning going with a single to right field. So it just shows that the players that step up in the situations that are clutch are obviously the ones that you need to have on your team. Now I want to bring up more points. Johnny David, good signing, bad signing, others.
Well, obviously it's going to be a good sign to bring in a solid center fielder. The only problem with him is his arm strength in center field, but he's really a great fielder, solid leadoff guy, will steal bases for you. So I think that he's another key component, and you still keep Bernie Williams' bat in the lineup.
It's also good because the key factor for the Yankees is getting people on base, because home runs are not going to always win you games. You're going to need base runners and base hit to basically do the little things, the things that the Yankees haven't been doing the past 5 years. And Damon really is replacing what Chuck Knobloch left off here in New York. It was a actual leadoff hitter, because ever since Knobloch left, they put Derek Jeter in the hole, and he's done a nice job filling in. But Derek Jeter's not really a leadoff hitter; he's more that number 2 hitter that sets it. That once the leadoff man, get on base, he either moves them into scoring position or he drives them home, which basically he has been doing his job his whole career, and he's done a fantastic job of it. But now that Damon's in the lineup, we got Jeter at the 2 hole, A-Rod at the 3 hole, Matsui in the lineup, Sheffield. How do you see the chemistry during the year so far? How do you think it will fare?
Well, I still think that the X factor this season is going to be Jason Giambi. Can he put up the numbers that he did last season? Now, last season he didn't play as many games as he did. This season I expect to see him on the field much more. And last year I really saw that his glove was much improved. Right when he came to New York from Oakland, everyone was worried about he's one of the worst fielding first basemen in the league, and he's really improved on that. So I think that his ability to strike out in big situations really hurt the Yankees in the past, and I think that he's going to have to become a more consistent, maybe more of a contact hitter.
Yeah, well, he certainly can learn a lot from Don Mattingly, because if you want to learn how to hit, he's the one to go to. And back to his fielding, he learned a lot from Tino Martinez when he was still here, but now Tino is doing bigger and better things. And quickly, before we go, what is your prediction for this season, and how do you think they're going to do?
Well, I think the 100-win mark should be the mark that the Yankees should be aiming for. Now, I know it seems high, especially after a 1-2 start, but when you have a $200 million plus payroll this season, you really have to exceed expectations. Now, the expectations, it's going to be win the division, it's going to be win around 95 games, but I think for a season to be a success, you got to win a World Series and even go further than the wins that you're expected to get.
Now, thank you very much, Matthew. We're going to go talking to David Suntup's group about his favorite team, the New York Metropolitans. Don't go away.
Welcome back to the drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Today we're going to preview the New York Mets. The Mets made a lot of moves in the offseason, including acquisitions of Billy Wagner, Carlos Delgado, and Paul Aduga. Do the Mets have enough firepower to stop the brave streak of the NL East titles?
Yes, they do. They have Billy Wagner. He's a great pitcher. They have Carlos Delgado. He's a great pickup for the Mets. They have Paul Aduga. He's a very good catcher. And this year they will have enough firepower to stop the Braves in the NL East titles. Carlos Delgado, as I said, he's a great player. And he's also a great pickup.
Oh, definitely a great pickup. One of the best pickups of the offseason. Delgado or Wagner. Well, let's put it this way. Braves bullpen was horrible last year. It's not much better this year. They don't have a closer this year. It's basically a bullpen by committee. So their bullpen almost lost in the division last year. The Phillies actually almost won that division. Their star rotation is suspect, but I'd still take it over the Mets rotation right now, especially with Pedro's injury. Their lineup is pretty good. But the pieces that the Mets added, the Mets came so close last year, but they had no closer, and they were missing a bat in that lineup. They added that with Delgado. He's hit 30 homers 10 years in a row. He's a great first baseman. He's proven that he could hit in pitchers' parks in the NL. And then you had Billy Wagner, the second best closer in this game behind Mariano Rivera. He's just lights out, and he will help the starters out so much because he'll actually be able to close. He's unlike Braden Looper, who was just an enigma for the Mets. Now the Mets have a reliable middle relief corps, and they will shorten the games for the starters.
Pedro Martinez, his toe has been a big issue. If he cannot stay healthy, will the Mets still be competitive, and how will their starters do?
Without Pedro Martinez, the Mets will not go anywhere. They need Pedro in their lineup. He is a big part of this team. He's helped the Mets a lot, and the Mets have other pitchers like Billy Wagner, but they need Pedro, and I don't think they'll make the playoffs if they don't have Pedro.
I don't think they'll make the playoffs either if they don't have Pedro. Pedro is that good. Last year, lowest on-base percentage in the National League, lowest batting average in the National League. If this guy had any sort of run support, any sort of bullpen, I think this guy would have won 20 games and maybe even the Cy Young. That's how good this guy was because people don't realize how good he was because he only went 15-8, but he was a lot better than 15-8. That's how good the guy was. And then you have Tom Glavine. He's rediscovered himself. He's really pitching with the corners now. He's not just a fastball guy where he has a really good changeup. He's working in the curveball. So Tom Glavine realizes his limitations now, and he's pitching to him, and he's been pitching great. Brian Bannister, I think the guy really has a lot of talent. He may struggle at first, but he's really accurate, and he knows how to pitch. Steve Traxel, I'm a little worried about him. He didn't do well in spring training, and the back could still be an issue. And Victor Zambrano, I don't think he should be in the rotation, but the Mets really don't have anyone else, and they really need Hammond in the bullpen.
The Mets struggled to score runs last year. This year, we've added Carlos Delgado, and the younger players are more experienced. What will the difference be about this year's lineups than last year's?
Well, last year's lineup, they didn't really put up any runs. They added Carlos Delgado, he's a big hitter. A lot of home runs last year. Also, in the Mets lineup last year, they had Kazumatsui. He was a terrible player. He didn't do much for the Mets at all. But there are a lot of more younger players on this team. They're more experienced, and they will produce more runs and more hits.
Well, the Mets lineup will definitely be a lot better this year. First of all, when you see the Mets start off their inning with an at-bat, Jose Reyes will not be swinging at the first pitch. He needs to take pitches. He needs to work counts. The guy walked like maybe 20 times last year. So he needs to get on base more, and then he could steal more bases and be more aggressive. Carlos Delgado, he's a great hitter. He will take pressure off of Wright, Floyd, and Beltran. Beltran will have a better year than last year. You know, he's adjusting now, so he has no excuse anymore. Beltran really has to play well. Wright is a lot more experienced than last year, offensively and defensively. I think if the Mets really make the playoffs this year and win the division, I think Wright could win the MVP. And then Nady is my dark horse here because I think he could really have a good year if he's healthy. And LaDuca, he knows how to play the game, and he gets the bat on the ball.
Guys, real quick, Kaz Matsui is starting the year on the DL. Anderson Hernandez will be starting the second base for the Mets. What do you think will happen when Kaz comes back?
Well, Kazumatsui, like I said before, he wasn't really a good player, and they were paying him a lot of money. When Kaz is back, he'll probably join the Mets, second baseman. But Anderson Hernandez, he will be starting for the Mets this year.
Well, hopefully Anderson Hernandez can get some more hits because he needs to really show something with the bat. His defense is better than Kaz, but if Anderson Hernandez can hit the ball, he'll start over Kaz.
Guys, that wraps up our segment on the Mets. See you next time after this. Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Now we're going to preview the National League. Last season, the Houston Astros surprised everyone and won the National League pennant. Which team do you think is the best team in the National League this season?
St. Louis, they have a good team. Albert Pujols, one of the best players on that team. They have enough power and to beat the Houston Astros if they go in again this year. But I don't think the Astros will be the National League team win the pennant. There are other good teams this year, a lot of rookies. The Mets have a shot at this too.
Well, I'm going to agree with Andrew here. I'm going to say the Cardinals because their lineup is just lethal. They have Pujols. Scott Rowland is healthy. That was a huge loss last year because Rowland was just a fantastic player, and now he's healthy. Last year he had that injury where he stopped Choi ran into him, and they have Jim Edmonds, so they have a great middle of the lineup. They have Juan Encarnacion. He's a good supporting player. They have David Exon at the top of that lineup, so I really like their lineup. Their pitching is really good with Carpenter and Mulder and Suppan and Marquise, so they have a good rotation, and their bullpen's always been pretty good with Izzy at the end of the game. So I'm going to have to go with the Cardinals like I have for the last couple of years. The Astros, while they still have a good team, losing Clemens is going to hurt them. They really don't hit that well. They got better because they got Preston Wilson, but losing Clemens, I don't think the Astros are a playoff team without Clemens.
National League West is one of the most wide-open races in baseball. Which team do you think is the favorite in the NL West and why?
It has to be the Padres. They've improved in the years to come. They're a great team, and they have a lot of good players on the team. They have great pitchers, and their lineup this year is pretty well. But there are other teams that are good in the NL West, but the Padres are one of the best in this race.
Well, the Padres aren't a bad team. They have Jake Peavy, they have Trevor Hoffman, they added Mike Cameron, Mike Piazza, two former Mets. But Piazza's still not the same player anymore. Vinny Castilla, they added him. He was a 40 home run guy, 120 RBI guy in Colorado. Now he's in San Diego, one of the worst hitters parks in the majors. I'm going to have to go with the Dodgers here. I like the Dodgers. Wait, what were you going to say?
Sorry, no.
Well, I like the Dodgers because they made some good moves. They got Furcal, they got Nomar, but Nomar has to stay healthy. Their bullpen is solid. They have Danny Baez to set up. They have a Brazabon to set up, so they have a good relief corps. They need Gagne to be healthy. Derek Lowe in the rotation. I like them overall. I also have Adalis Perez, Brad Penny. Penny's healthy this year, so I really like the Dodgers to win this thing. J.D. Drew, last year he wasn't healthy. This year, if he's healthy, I think he could have a big year. They got Bill Miller, so they have a good supporting cast, and I think Grady Little, he got kicked out of Boston because of the mistake that he made in the ALCS Game 7. But I think Grady Little's a fine manager. So I think the Dodgers should win this division if everyone's healthy.
You think they will go all the way and win the pennant?
No, they're not. I don't think they're winning the pennant. I think they'll win the NLS now.
NLS, all right.
All right, guys. Which team is your sleeper team in the NL?
Well,
in the NL.
As Dave said, what his favorite was, I think the Dodgers. They're my sleeper team. They're going to prove they're not going to show in the beginning, and then towards the middle and the end they're going to improve a lot better. And they're my sleeper team.
I love the Milwaukee Brewers. Last year they were over 500. I really like their lineup. They have Prince Fielder coming up. He could be a 40 home run guy. They have Jeff Jenkins. I really like their lineup. And their pitching is good. They have Ben Sheets, but Ben Sheets needs to be healthy because he has ace stuff, and the Brewers cannot win without Ben Sheets. They have Chris Capuano, David Bush, and I like their closer at the end of the game, Derek Turnbull. Last year, they experienced with Mike Adams at the beginning of the year in the closer's role. He didn't work out. Now they have Turnbull, so they have a really good closer at the end of the game. And Brewers really have a good young supporting cast. They have Richie Weeks, so they have a lot of good players, including Grady Clark, who had a great year last year playing center field.
Guys, real quick, who's your NL Rookie of the Year?
Brian Bannister, Mets pitcher.
My Rookie of the Year, Ryan Zimmerman, Washington Nationals. Really hit well last year, and he's off to a good start this year.
Guys, thanks for watching. That's it for this week's edition of the 30-minute drill. See you next time as we preview all sports.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Chowdhury is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season. And I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
In America, he is a citizen here, so it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
Because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the 30-minute drill. We have a lot to talk about. NBA playoffs happening in a week or so. We're going to be talking about that in this segment. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew Speedy Claxton Taylor. So NBA playoffs basically set in stone, the teams that have made it. There's a couple teams that are still on the bubble, barely alive, breathing for room, but otherwise all the seeds are locked up. First, we talked about the Eastern Conference. Detroit having the number one seed, having a magical year, having over 60 wins. We got Miami in the playoffs, the Nets. We got the Chicago Bulls, who actually just got the number 8 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks. We have many other teams in the playoffs. How do you see this Eastern Conference faring?
Well, obviously, it's really heavy on the top. You got the Miami Heat and the Detroit Pistons, who are obviously the favorites to win. The New Jersey Nets really have been playing excellent ball in the last month. I'll talk about the lower seed, the Chicago Bulls now. In the beginning of the season, no one thought that this team was going to be able to make it. They don't have the star power. The only people that people know on this team are Ben Gordon and Kirk Heinrich. And I really think that Luol Deng was the key for this team the whole season. He really had a solid season. Maybe the stats don't show it in the big numbers, but he was really a solid part in this team's run.
Yeah, the former Blue Devil Luol Deng, 26 points in their win last night against the Miami Heat, which propelled them into the playoffs. Now, I mean, how the clutch, him and Duhan, Ben Gordon and Heinrich have really formed a scoring tandem, which not a lot of people can match in the league, even though they're all four guards. But they really stepped up in the clutch, and they each get their fair share of time. And when they go in there, you know they're going to come up in the clutch, correct?
Yeah, well, you look at this team, and I think they're just one or two players away from making a big run. And next year, they got the Knicks pick, probably going to be a top 3 pick. They can get maybe an Adam Morrison, a LaMarcus Aldridge. And then they're going to have their own pick, which could also be a top 15 pick potentially. So the future for the Bulls is definitely in a forward direction.
Now, in this conference, who do you see as a sleeper in the playoffs, and how do you see them faring, like going through?
Well, I don't think it's really a sleeper, but the Nets, I'm pretty sure they could be a 3 seed right now. I really think that they have all the components to make a run in the playoffs, not only in the East, but in the championship as well. I think that they have a solid 3 guards tandem over there. The only problem is, are their inside guys going to be able to withstand the constant beating of the playoffs? They're not going to have the power inside, but they just got to hope that their inside guys could just be solid and play defense throughout the playoffs.
And that's been the problem in the previous years for the Nets. We've always seen the Nets make it really far in the playoffs, and then once they had to play against the bigger teams, such as the Los Angeles Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs, Jason Collins could not get it done against these big men. Now they had Kristaps and Collins up there, so maybe if they could hold the ground a little bit, the scoring tandem of Carter, Kidd, and Jefferson can bring them up to the next level. Now, other teams in this bracket I just wanted to talk about here. Well, it's actually bracket. NCAA tournaments past us now, but we got many teams that have made it this year. How do you see the Heat? Now, they have had a very good year after coming up to a slow start. A healthy Alonzo Mourning has really propelled them to the next level. Shaq having a good year despite being plagued by injury. Dwayne Wade always being Dwayne Wade. How do you see the Heat faring?
When you talk about any Shaquille O'Neal ball club, he's always going to be the key. If he's healthy, the team's going to be in a positive direction. Now you look at Shaq, he definitely is on the way down. He's getting up there in years. But this team also has a guy by the name of Dwayne Wade, who really is one of the most underrated players in basketball. Just a tremendous talent. We saw that the Heat really tanked that game against the Bulls. But when this team's in the playoffs, they're really also going to be a contender as well.
And 2 other teams I just quickly want to talk about, the Washington Wizards and the Philadelphia 76ers. How do you see these 2 teams faring?
Well, you look at these teams, and they have one star player. With the Wizards, they got Gilbert Arenas. With the Sixers, obviously, Allen Iverson. So I think that just like the Los Angeles Lakers, one dominating player really could alter a game's image. So I think of these 2 teams, the Sixers probably have a better chance to go somewhere.
Actually, I disagree. I think the Wiz, with that scoring tandem of Gilbert and Antoine Jameson, they can get it done. It's going to be tough, though, because they don't really have the highest seed. We're going to be back in a few moments discussing Major League Baseball. Don't go away. Good day. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill. Now we're going to talk about the New York Yankees and their progress in the early season thus far. I'm Andrew Gayo. Matthew, General chose Chicken Taylor. So, Yankees right now standing at 6-7. They've been each day they either look really good or then they don't look as good, and they kind of look a little shaky, pitching-wise, hitting-wise, whatever. It's been an inconsistent 13 games thus far. How do you see this season in the early going through your own eyes?
Well, you look at all the all-star power for the New York Yankees, and it comes down to they're really not playing small ball when they need to. They have all these home run hitters on the team. You know, when you have home run hitters, you're either going to put on major runs or you're not even going to score at all. And the one bright spot for this team, along with Derek Jeter, who it seems like he's always on a bright spot, is Jason Giambi, really playing well. And many people said last year he had a great season. This year might be another letdown. But he's really, even exceeded all expectations. So the Giambino has really been a bright spot.
Now, frankly, talking to our producer, Mr. Hookstraight, before we were discussing, I think the problem, he thinks the problem, so do I agree, the problem is the pitching, because if you're not going to have consistent pitching through one game throughout another game, you're not going to win games, especially in October, where the Yankees, the past 6 years or so, they have not really done the job that they're expected to, because every year George Steinbrenner and the rest of the Yankees, they have the idea that they have to have the best team in order to win the World Series. And if the hitting has been there, but when they face the good pitching in the big games, they haven't been hitting. and their pitching has been getting beat because they just don't have those big game pitchers that they did in the past. Agree.
Yeah, well, you look at the last few playoffs, and it seems that big game pitchers always beat the big name, big power hitters. And from that 96 to 2000 run for the New York Yankees, they had big game pitchers. I mean, there was multiple guys that you could throw out there in a Game 7 and feel confident. Now, this year, the big name would be Mike Messina or Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson really been inconsistent this season. Last year during the regular season, they found Sean Chacon, Aaron Small, Ching-Ming Wang. They were good, but when it was playoff time, these are still inexperienced players. So I think that a veteran, not too old, but maybe in the playoffs, you need someone that has some experience.
Now, right now, Aaron Small, who was 10-0 last year, is on the disabled list. He really came out of nowhere last year and came up and actually proved himself to be a big game pitcher because every single time he went on the mound, he gave a gutsy effort, and it was very solid, not giving up meant a lot of runs. They were in basically good shape every single time he took the mound. When Small returns from the disabled list, does this bolster the Yankees' bullpen, which he will be in, and maybe does it add another starter if it comes down to it?
Well, obviously it's going to help. He's really established himself last season. I like him in the starting rotation. Last year when he was starting games, really was a stellar pitcher. It seemed like he always worked himself out of tough situations. But when you get a big pitcher back from the disabled list, it not only boosts his confidence, it boosts the whole team's confidence. Maybe it'll light a little spark for the Yankees.
Now, another move that the Yankees could make, I would make, move Jarrett Wright to the bullpen, and if Carl Pavano comes back, what in the world do you do with him? Because they put a lot of money into this young man. But for the year before he came to the Yankees in 2004, he pitched a great season in Florida for the Marlins, in which many considered him to be a Cy Young candidate. He actually came in second that year. Now he comes to the Yankees last year. Injury played the whole year. When he did pitch, he was not there. His pitches were hanging. He was giving up a lot of home runs. How do you see him if he comes back this year healthy? What are they going to do with him?
First of all, let me talk about Jared Wright. If I was the owner, I'd put him in the middle of Greenwich Village and get him as far away from Yankee Stadium as I can. All the fans hate him. He just doesn't do anything for you. Now, Carl Pavano, he really has a lot of potential, but the problem with him is that he's unliked throughout the whole ball club, and all the players, there might be a little tension in that situation. Now you take it down to San Francisco. Barry Bonds, really a tremendous player, but there's always going to be that tension. So I think that maybe a little bit of team chemistry could be hurting once Carl Pavano comes back. But pitching-wise, he's an upgrade. Could help the rotation if he's healthy.
Quite frankly, when he's healthy, he can be an asset to the team. But I never saw him, before they signed him, I never saw him fitting into the Yankee system because I already knew after they lost that series to the Red Sox in 2004, I knew that the Yankees' problem was getting all these big-name guys, and it was ruining their chemistry. And it's just adding to the fire that you cannot build a team around big players. It has to have a little chemistry, and it has to come with experience. Thank you very much. David Suntup's going to be talking about the New York Metropolitans and also the National Hockey League playoffs. Take care.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Now we are going to talk about Major League Baseball. The Yankees are off to a slow start. They're 6-6. Why are they not playing well? And how do you think they will be this season?
Well, they're coming off a slow start. They still got the key players, A-Rod, Gary Sheffield, Derek Jeter. But they're pitching. They need more pitchers. Jason Giambi has not produced that many runs. In the first 2 games, he played pretty well, but in connects 3 games, he
hit 2 home runs yesterday.
Yeah, but that was yesterday, Dave. He hasn't really produced any.
Oh, he's playing better though.
He's playing better, but he hasn't really. Randy Johnson, 16 Ks this season already. But as I always say, they will go to the World Series.
Well, Andrew, they haven't made the World Series in 3 years. I wouldn't say always, but first of all, this is basically the same team as last year, except they will catch more balls in the gaps because Johnny Damon is playing center field instead of Bernie Williams, and Bernie Williams had old legs, but Damon could run, so he'll catch more balls in the gaps. But other than that, they could beat anyone offensively. When it comes down to it, and when it comes down to playoff baseball, you win by defense and pitching, and the Yankees have neither of them. Randy Johnson will have a great year. I'll admit that. And Mike Messina, if he's healthy, he'll have a good year too. Ching-Ming Wang, you don't know what you'll get out of him. Jared Wright, he's awful. Okay, so their pitching is not really that good. Pavano is hurt. Chacon, he's been really inconsistent to start the year. He actually came out of the bullpen yesterday, and he didn't do well. He gave up 2 runs. So their starting rotation is very iffy. Getting to Mariano Rivera will be a problem. They have Proctor, they have Farnsworth, they have Mike Myers, they have Littell, who's hurt. So their bullpen is not very good besides Mariano Rivera. So they have a lot of problems right now. And I still think they'll make. I still think they're a playoff team though, until proven otherwise. They'll make the playoffs. Maybe they'll win the division, but going far in the playoffs is another story.
The Red Sox are off to a 7-4 start. Why have they been playing so good this season?
They have like pitching. They have the hitting. David Ortiz is a very like power hitter. He also hits in the clutch.
That's what baseball is. It's about pitching and hitting.
Defense.
Kurt Schilling playing very well too. But as far as Manny Ramirez, he's coming up to a very slow start. He hasn't produced any hits or runs. I'm very surprised at what he has been doing lately.
Well, imagine when Manny Ramirez's bat does come alive, Andrew, how well he will play.
He will.
But the difference between the Red Sox this year and last year, pitching. Kurt Schilling. They basically signed an ace in the offseason by getting Schilling back. Schilling has been lights out for the Red Sox, 3 wins in his first 3 starts. Josh Beckett has just been awesome so far. He's also 3-0. So the big 2 at the top of the rotation, the Yankee killers, as Yankee haters would like to call them, or Yankee fans would like to call them, because Schilling and Beckett just pitched great against the Yankees. Then after that, they have Clement, they have Wakefield. Clement, he's a little iffy. And basically their 5th starter role is going to be iffy because David Wells is hurt and he hasn't been playing that great. Their bullpen is a big difference from last year. Keith Folk lost his closer's job to Jonathan Papelbon. Papelbon has played great. They have Folk in that bullpen. They have Craig Hansen waiting in the minors. They have Julian Tavares. And then their offense is really good. Coco Cripps, that was a great move for the future and the present. They signed him for 4 years. They basically still have a good line. Mike Lowell has come back. Mark Loretta, he was hurt last year at the Padres. He's playing great. And then you have David Ortiz, Jason Varitek. So they're having a really good year.
Wait, hold on. Do you think they're going to the playoffs today or not?
Red Sox, yeah. I picked them to win the division before the year, and I'm staying. Right. As long as they're healthy, I think they're the team to beat in the division.
All right.
Dave, your Mets are doing fantastic, 9-2.
Amazing.
Great hitting, solid pitching. They play the Braves this week, and then they play 10 road games in a row. Can the Mets maintain their play?
Yes, they have been playing amazingly good. Like, I would always like to say that they were terrible, but they are playing the best baseball they probably ever played. They are playing very well.
And I know the Mets haven't played the best teams, but hey, you have to play who you beat. You have to beat who you play, as they say. And they have 19 games against the Nationals and the Marlins this year each. So you have to play you have to beat who you play, excuse me. And Delgado's been getting clutch hits. Their offense is really good. Reyes is getting on base. Pitching has been solid. Everyone is giving them quality starts out. The bullpen has been lights out. Billy Wagner's pitching well now. They have good middle relief corps with Holland and Stench, so they're really playing good baseball.
Thanks, guys. That wraps up the segment. Stick around when we preview the NHL.
Welcome back to the drill. I'm your host, Andrew Axelband. Today's guest, Brian Rossman and Dave Suntup. Now we will preview the first round matchup between the Rangers and the Devils. The Devils have won their last 11 games, and they won the Atlantic Division. And they're coming off a fantastic win against Montreal. How much is their advantage in this momentum is going to help the Devils beat the Rangers?
It's going to help a lot. Momentum is the one thing you want going into the playoffs. You know, Marty, he's been hot lately. Everyone, they've been on a winning streak. You know, Gomez, Gianta, Elias picking up his 500th career point the other night, and Gianta getting his breaking the single season record for the Devils with scoring his 46th goal last night. So they're all very hot right now, and they got a lot of momentum.
Well, the Devils have just been playing great hockey. You have to tip your hat off to the Devils. First of all, on January 7th, they're down 19 points on the Flyers for a division lead. They played great hockey. This is a streaky hockey team. They won 10 games in January, and then now they won 11 games to end the season. So this is definitely a streaky team. They'll either win a lot of games or they'll lose a lot of games. But they haven't just beaten the bad teams. They've beaten a lot of good teams, too. They beat every team that's in the playoffs right now. And they beat the Flyers 2 times, beat the Canadiens 2 times, beat the Rangers a couple times. So they've really been playing great hockey. And momentum is definitely a big thing, but I think maybe they have too much momentum in a way. Because you won 11 games. Hopefully, for their sake, they save it for the playoffs.
All right. The Rangers have lost their last 5 games in the end of the season, and they fell from first place to third place. Can the Rangers regroup and play well in the playoffs?
I think they could. It's definitely going to be hard. You know, coming off a 5-game losing streak. You know, the past 2 weeks they didn't have Hendrik Lundqvist, they finally got him back last night. He was a little shaky, letting up 5 goals against the Senators. But, they've been playing weeks lately, and he's not a very reliable goaltender. Like, he's a good goaltender, but he's not someone you want to rely on in the in the clutch. I mean, back in, I believe 2001 when he faced the Devils when he was on the Hurricanes.
2002.
2002, I'm sorry. He did very well. They beat the Devils and went on to the Stanley Cup Finals, but they couldn't rely on him. They ended up losing to the Detroit Red Wings.
Well, they still made the Stanley Cup Finals, though. But what happened if Lundqvist got hurt again and Weeks had to play against the Devils and Weeks beat him again? Or you don't even want to think about that. I know you don't.
That definitely wouldn't be a good thing.
Also, Weeks, he's kind of a poor player, but Lundqvist, he's very young, so.
Yeah, Lundqvist he's the reason why the Rangers are in the playoffs. Lundqvist, in my opinion, he should be third in the Calder Trophy race for Rookie of the Year behind Ovechkin and Crosby, because he's been right there. Lundqvist has had a fantastic year, but they really need him to play well. I think they can regroup, but this is a very young team, and their inexperience really started to hurt them later in the year. After the Olympic break, their momentum was snapped. Lundqvist, he had to play a lot of those games in the Olympics to win the gold medal. He got tired, he got hurt. They lost Pruka for a couple of weeks, so they were out. And Yager needs some help. Yager, I think, tired at the end of the year. If he can't do all that stuff, could they regroup? Yes. Will they? I don't know, because the Devils are a very dangerous team. Maury Brodeur is playing very well, and the Devils have a ton of experience.
All right. Why have the Rangers been slumping? Why have they been slumping like this late?
To me, the really only thing I could think of was the loss of Henrik Lundqvist. They were coming in, thinking they were going to end up winning the division, but I think they got a little too cocky and they ended up, they weren't playing their hardest, and they just choked.
Well, they did choke, you're right, but you also have to tip your hat off to the Devils, because if the Devils didn't win their last 11 games, they never would have had a chance to win the division, because everyone thought they'd either be the 6th seed or the 7th seed, because they were pretty close with Montreal and Tampa for a time. But they were slumping because Lundqvist wasn't playing and they couldn't score goals. Yager cannot do it on his own. He needs help. He needs Pruka. He needs Nylander. He needs Straka. He needs these guys to step up and help him score goals. First of all, they played the Islanders and the Penguins, 2 teams in the lower part of the Eastern Conference, and they easily could have won one of those games or at least gotten points out of it. So the Rangers really blew their chance here. But it's a new season.
One last question. How much of an advantage is this ice to the Devils?
Home ice, you mean?
Well, I think it's definitely a big advantage. The Devils, the way their momentum has been going into the playoffs, that's awesome. And now that they got home ice, having their fans behind them cheering them on, that's definitely the best thing for them.
Well, home ice is always an advantage, I'll admit. But first of all, it's not like they're traveling a lot because it's only 10 minutes away from the CAA to MSG. So it's not really that much it's an advantage in a way because they're home, but traveling is not going to be an issue here. And also, the Rangers have played in the CAA many times.
David, also you got to remember,
the Rangers were 1-3 there, so that's the only thing.
Rangers fans playing at the Madison Square Garden, they've been, Rangers fans are very harsh.
Well, there will be a lot of Rangers fans at the CAA, so it's not as much of an advantage as the Devils as it would be to other teams.
Next, guys, more Rangers Devils after this.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, hockey expert Brian Rossman and David Suntup. Now we're going to continue to preview the first round series between the Rangers and the Devils. What do you think of the goalie matchup between Henrik Lundqvist and Martin Brodeur?
This is definitely going to be an exciting matchup. I mean, coming in, Brodeur, he's coming in off a hot streak, 11 wins. He's been playing amazing. Lundqvist, he's coming back from an injury. He didn't do that well against the Senators the other night, but I think he'll make a rebound and come back. Marty, he has a very unorthodox style of play. He's flipping and fluffing around. You never know what he's going to do. Where Lundqvist, he's more of a solid, modern style goaltender, and that I think will be a little bit more helpful in these playoffs. And also, Brodeur definitely has the experience. Lundqvist has no experience in the NHL playoffs. Being in the season is one thing, but the playoffs, it's a whole nother ballgame.
So since you're the starting goalie for the Wayne Hills hockey team, do you look up to any of these players?
Of these two, probably more Lundqvist than Brodeur, because Lundqvist is probably more my style, where Brodeur is a little bit more, flipping and flopping around.
But we all know that you're a big Martin Brodeur fan. But back to Dubin's question, it's going to be a fantastic matchup. First of all, any matchup between the Rangers and Devils is an elite matchup. But when you have two of the best goaltenders in the NHL, Henrik Lundqvist, the best rookie goalie this year, which is fantastic. He carried the Rangers back to the playoffs. And Martin Brodeur, he's the best goalie in the NHL now that Patrick Waugh has retired. Martin Brodeur, he dominates in the playoffs. It's his season. He's won 3 Stanley Cups with the Devils. He's just been fantastic in the playoffs. He's basically Mr. Clutch for this team because he's led the Devils to 3 Stanley Cups. And Brodeur has been on fire the last 11 games he's won. And I know Brodeur was hurt earlier in the year, but now he's really come back and play well. And Lundqvist, the experience, the lack of playoff experience may hurt him, but he has played in big games before. He did win the gold medal of Sweden. But we'll see. It'll definitely be interesting. But I think both are definitely up to the challenge.
Jaromir Jagr carried the Rangers the whole year. The playoffs are a different story since more teamwork is required. Who needs to step up on the Rangers, and will they step up?
Well, you got to look up to the players. Yager needs help out there. Kasperitis, Pody, Nylander, Straka, they all need to help out and, get those assists and goals. But Lundqvist, I think I'm a little bit more worried about, him being out for a couple of weeks. He's got to make a big comeback and step up.
Well, the people who need to step up are Nylander, Straka, and Pruka, especially on offense. That's where the Rangers need their help because they're not scoring goals. They have had a lot of trouble scoring goals. They couldn't score against Pittsburgh that well. They didn't score against the Islanders, did nothing against Philly, and they did nothing against Ottawa. Yager obviously needs help. I think Yager is very worn down. He played really hard in the beginning of the year. He played in the Olympics, then he got hurt. I think he's just been burnt down, especially without Pruka, because Pruka and Yager just played great together, and they really need Pruka to come and step up, because that's why they're doing well, because they had two people scoring goals. Without Pruka, because he hasn't really done anything since the Olympic break, that's where the Rangers have had their trouble. Will they step up? Well, to be determined. That's what I think. I hope they do, but I don't know if they will.
Brian Gianta's on a hot streak. He scored 47 goals this season. How will the Rangers shut him down?
They just, they need to challenge him a lot. They got to start using body. Lundqvist has to do good in net and stop the pucks. But I don't know. It's going to be hard. Gianta's on a hot streak lately. I don't think he can be stopped.
Well, the Rangers have to be physical. I want to see Kasperitis out there hitting. Everyone has to be hitting. This Rangers team has not been physical the last 5 games, and that's why they've been losing. You have to be physical. You have to be physical with Gianta. You have to make him pass the puck. But the type of team that the Devils are, they have a lot of people that can pass the puck. They have Gomez. They have Elias. They have Lindbergh. The Devils are a very versatile team. And even if Gianta doesn't beat you, the other guys are very capable of beating you. But the Rangers have to really be physical and really go after Gianta and not let him beat them. Guys,
real quick, who wins the series and how many games and why?
I'm going to say the Devils in 5 if the Rangers have been playing the way they did. But if they step up, I think they're going to give them a little bit of a hard time. Devils might do it in 6.
Well, if the Rangers and Devils keep playing like they are, Devils in 5 or 4. But if the Rangers step it up, I think Devils in 7 because the Rangers have had trouble winning at the Continental Airlines Arena, and the Devils have had trouble winning at the Garden because both teams are 1-3 on the opponent's home run.
Guys, thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the 30-Minute Drill. Tune in next week when we talk about baseball, the NBA playoffs, and the NHL playoffs.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Lynn is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season. And I think probably Villanova will probably make the MLS from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
in America, he is a citizen here, so it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
How can they get you? Because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the 30-Minute Drill. We're going to be talking about Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and etc. Just so many topics to discuss this week. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Matthew Urkel Taylor here now. We're going to be talking about the New York Yankees here in Major League Baseball. Right now standing at 9-8 after 17 games. Pitching staff, recently it's been looking better, I guess you could say, because in the beginning, I was at the game Saturday. They seem to play better when they're home because on the road they look like really like they're in a coma because they don't play well. How's your feeling in week 3 of the season?
Well, you look at most teams, and you look, and the majority of the teams do play better at home. It's just natural. You're used to the field, used to the surroundings. You got the home fans. And the Yankees really had a tough 3-week stretch to start the season. Now, all the Met fans are saying that they had a great start as well. They played much easier of a schedule. Now, I think the key for the Yankees for these past few games has been the starting pitching. Mike Messina had a good start. Randy Johnson bounced back from that bad outing against Toronto. Sean Chacon really had his first good outing of the season. He was pitching awful early in the year when he was in the bullpen. And once again, Jason Giambi is just coming through clutch. You probably don't even recognize it. I got his college jersey on right now. So I think that the runs are going to be there, and the Yankee fans just got to hope that the pitching comes along.
Yeah, you're looking stunning in that jersey. I just wanted you to know that. That's just my opinion. May the viewers think otherwise, but yeah, it's true. The pitching is obviously the key for the Yankees because if the Yankees want to win, they have to have Johnson pitching at it, Randy Johnson style, striking out maybe between 7 and 10 strikeouts a game. Like Mussina playing, providing veteran leadership. Ching-Ming Wang, if he's healthy, he can be effective. And when I saw Sean Chacon pitch Saturday, he was a little inconsistent going into that start, but he had some control issues, but he came out with the win. In big situations, he got it out when it was needed. And they're going to get Aaron Small back. He's still on the disabled list. He made a couple of rehab starts. He's doing well down in AAA. So it's basically time's going to be the table factor, if that makes any sense, for the Yankees because once they get all these people that are hurt back, they can maybe provide them some help. Now, we're talking about the offense now. It doesn't seem to be a problem in their early going, but if they start playing good pitching, is the offense going to hold up with this lineup?
Well, it always seems like in the past the Yankees either the pitching was doing really good and the bats were down or vice versa. Now, in these past few games, it's been a little bit of both have been up. Now, Johnny Damon, he's really met all expectations. He went from one big ball club to another, so he was kind of used to the New York scene of the big city. Mr. Reliable, Derek Jeter, he's always on top of his game. Gary Sheffield's really swinging a hot bat. And Alex Rodriguez now, he's playing decent ball, but for being the highest paid player in baseball and making $25 million a year, his production's got to be higher than what it is right now.
Now, you brought up a good point about A-Rod because we all know that when the score is 10-1, he tends to have breakout games, hit in the most non-important situations. But when the important situation comes up, when they need him in the clutch, he seems to be just non-existent. Do you think this problem's going to be a reoccurring one in the future?
Oh, well, yeah, we saw it last year in the postseason. And right now, there's only one guy that I trust in a tight game in the ninth inning versus a good closer. And, of course, that's going to be Derek Jeter. He's always come through in the past. Now, Alex Rodriguez, early in his career with Seattle and Texas, he really was never put in big-time situations. Those teams weren't as successful as the Yankees are. And now he has to realize that in New York, you got to perform under the pressure or the fans are just going to turn your back like this. And he's got to realize that you got to make big hits in order to have a name in New York.
Now, Saturday at the stadium, they were giving him a hard time because he left a couple people on base, and the fans that I was sitting there, they were saying some profane things, not really to be said on national television here, since people see us here in Japan. But you can't really see it. You got to see he's got to perform in the clutch. Otherwise, if he's going to lose the fans and he's going to start losing his, people, his teammates are not going to lose. They're going to lose trust in him. So that's going to be an issue that they're going to have to fix. We're going to be right back in a moment. We are being to discuss the National Football League draft. Let's go New York Giants. Draft a good player. We'll be back. Shalom and welcome back to this week's edition of the 30-Minute Drill. Now we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, talking about who's going where and what teams are going to improve and what teams are not going to improve. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Matthew, daylight come and you got to come home, Taylor. So, NFL draft, number 1 pick going to the Houston Texans. Reginald Bush projected to go number 1. How do you see the Texans? Are they going to take Bush?
Well, really no surprise. All the experts think that they're going to take him. I personally do too. It's not only his performance on the field, but he's a big-name player. And maybe what the Texans need is a marquee name. And the other people are going to watch the Texans, not because they're going to be winning games, but because they want to see if Reggie Bush is for real. We all knew that at USC he was just a tremendous talent. And now people are wanting to see that can the guy perform under the pressure in the NFL. Now playing in Houston, not a very successful franchise, not as much pressure. But in the NFL, there's always that you have to perform. So I think that it's going to be a good pick for them. He's going to be a quality NFL player.
Now, let's look at some other teams in this top. The New Orleans Saints recently picking up Drew Brees via free agency. Do you see them trading down maybe to give another team like the Jets a higher pick?
Well, I don't think so. If I was them, I'd really stick with DeBrickshaw Ferguson. Now, taking a lineman, it's always a safe pick. This guy, he's just a proven player. We saw at the University of Virginia how good he was. It seemed like who was ever going versus him was just neutralized throughout the game. I think that you really can't go wrong by taking DeBrickshaw.
Wait, were you talking about the Saints taking DeBrickshaw or the Jets?
Oh, I was talking about the Saints.
Oh, so you think DeBrickshaw Ferguson's going too?
I really think that he should be. I mean, both these quarterbacks, you're not going to take one now. The only other guys in the top 5 that you could think of are secondary guys, maybe Michael Huff, Jimmy Williams, and then you got the 2 quarterbacks, Matt Leinart and Vince Young, which they already sit at that position. So I think that a tackle, it's always good to protect the quarterback, especially a guy like Drew Brees. You give him some time in the pocket, he could pick you apart.
Now, number 3 pick, Tennessee Titans. Obviously, I should say obviously, but right now, projected to get Matthew Leinart. Do you see them getting Leinart?
Oh, yeah, I think they're going to take Leinart. I mean, many people are doubting his arm strength and his ability to be mobile in the pocket, but you look at what this guy did at USC, just a tremendous player. He might not have the greatest arm strength, the greatest physical features, but what he does is he's a great leader, and we all know that he was a winner at USC, and I think that could carry over to the Titans if you can get a little talent around him.
Now, a lot of people are saying that they want Leinart, but some other people say a better fit for the team, since for the past 10 years or so, Steve McNair has been the leader of the franchise, and he's a mobile quarterback. They want to give Vince Young maybe to fill in the same mold as him, same style, I guess you could say, as a quarterback. Who would you say is a better fit in this team, Young or Leinart?
Well, I think that Vince Young, but I still think they're going to take Matt Leinart. Now you look at Young, we saw in the national championship game, the guy's very mobile. He has that quick release. He's able to hit targets. And I think that he could be a very good quarterback. He's tall, he's athletic. And with those wide receivers, they don't have the all-star names, but maybe if he's mobile in the pocket, that will draw defenses around, leave some wide open receivers for him.
Now the New York Jets falling with the number 4 pick here. My theory, if DeBrickshaw Ferguson falls all the way down, if he's not picked in the top 3 picks, the Jets he's a must get, because the line, as we all saw last year, they had no line basically. Everybody was hurt, and the people that were in there could not get the job done. If DeBrickshaw's picked, who should the Jets take in this draft?
Well, I'd stick with either Michael Huff or Jimmy Williams. Now, the Jets' problem, it really wasn't directly their secondary, but you can't really get hurt by taking a guy back there. Now, if you take Ferguson, that's always going to help. A few years ago, the Jets' strength was their offensive line. They were always known for having one of the best in the NFL. Last season, guys got hurt, people got traded, and they couldn't establish a run, and all their quarterbacks took a beating. So if you are really an effective tackle, maybe like a guy like Robert Gallery, he could be like, he really changed the image of that offensive line.
Well, they're going to have to do something to repair that line, because we also Kevin Mawai was hurt, and they just had strings of injuries. And if they don't get the Brickshaw, actually, I shouldn't even say that. If this is a good plan for the Jets would be, I'm not a Jet fan, but this would be what the right thing to do would be. Right now, have Pennington and Ramsey, stick them out 1 year, see how it goes. Draft DeBrickshaw Ferguson, try to repair the line. And if that Pennington-Ramsey combination does not work, next year just draft Brady Quinn in the draft, because he's the real deal. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. David Suntup is going to be talking about the New York Metropolitans and the NHL. We'll be back.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin, and today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Today we're going to talk about the New York Mets. Last week, the Mets lost a series at Shea Stadium against the Braves. This weekend, the Mets play the Braves for 3 in Atlanta. Can the Mets win the series coming up? And if the Mets do not, will they start to question themselves on whether they can or cannot beat the Braves?
Yes, Steven. The Mets can definitely beat this Braves team. They have the power, they have the hitting. They got Beltran. Well, he's out right now. They got Delgado, who's playing very well. And they're one of the best teams in the league right now, the Mets. But They have failed to beat the Braves in a series, but I think this is their series, and they will beat the Mets.
I think the Mets can definitely win this series. They'll have Pedro Martinez and Tom Glavine pitching in the series. Both pitchers pitched fantastic against the Braves the first time in the first series that these teams two played at Shea. But the thing that I'm worried about is they need Beltran and Floyd healthy. If they have Beltran and Floyd healthy, I think the Mets will hit enough. But I'm worried about Victor Zambrano. If he's going to be pitching in this series, he has to pitch decently well and have a quality start so he gives the Mets a good chance to win this game. It's the first time he pitched against the Braves. The Mets are out of the game by like the third inning because Andrew Jones just crushed them. And the Mets have to really be careful of Andrew Jones. They shouldn't pitch to him unless they totally have to because Andrew Jones just destroyed the Mets the first series of the year. And especially since Chipper Jones is hurt, let the other guys beat you. Don't let Andrew Jones beat you.
Victor Zambrano is not looking too good. He's pitching really poorly yesterday in San Diego. What should the Mets do about his pitching?
I don't know what's wrong with this guy. He's pitcher, should be pitching well. He's one of the worst guys I've seen in my life. They should drop or trade him. The Mets don't need this guy. They have plenty of other people. They should just get rid of him.
What I would do is I would try to send him down to AAA to work on some things. In 2001, Steve Traxel was struggling a little bit. He went down to AAA, and he totally rediscovered his touch. Maybe the same thing could be said for Zambrano. But Zambrano was never that good to begin with. He's very wild, very erratic on the mound, loses his confidence quickly. He walks a ton of hitters. Then the players in the field get impatient. He could give up. He could explode at any time. He's just terrible. What I would do is give him 1 or 2 more starts. Don't let this get to the point where he's the Ishii of last year and he pitches poorly until August. Yank him early, bring up John Maine, see what he could do, but do not put Aaron Howell in the rotation because Aaron Howell has been so great in the bullpen. The Mets really need him there.
Carlos Beltran's hamstrings, is hurt. Luckily the MRI came out negative. So, do you think it's smart that Beltran's not playing hurt? And how is he affecting the Mets by being out?
He's affecting the Mets because they really need him. He's a key player to the team, along with Carlos Delgado. It was good that it came out negative, but they still need him playing because he puts a lot of effort into the Mets team. So they need him back.
Well, he's definitely smart not to be playing hurt because last year it ruined his year. But the Mets really need him. They're losing a bat when they don't have Beltran. Then Beltran was really getting on base at a great pace this season. Delgado, Wright, Floyd were able to drive him in. So they really need Beltran back. And he was also hitting really well. So hopefully he gets well soon. And hopefully he's playing at 100%.
Guys, that wraps up the drill. See us next time when we talk about the Devils-Rangers series.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Matt Dubow. Today our guests are Brian the Brick Wall Rossman and David Suntup. All right, guys, today our topic is NHL playoffs, specifically the Devils and Rangers series. The Devils beat the Rangers in Game 1 6-1, in a game where the Devils totally dominated. How did the Devils dominate, and why did the Rangers play so poorly?
Devils are just so hot right now. They're on their 13th straight win last night. Marty's totally on his game, making saves left and right. And, they just can't be beat right now. They're unstoppable. And I'm saying right now they will win the Stanley Cup.
Ryan Ross making a bold prediction here. Well, the way the Devils are playing, they've just been fantastic. First of all, their power play is unstoppable. Rangers' penalty kill has been awful. The Devils, they really pass the puck well. Gomez, Gianta, Elias, Madden. They know how to move the puck. Jamie Lang are also playing very well. They know how to move the puck. They have the Rangers out of position, and they're getting really good shots on goal, really great score opportunities, and they're capitalizing. This is the kind of team the Devils are. Marty Brodeur, he's been a brick wall in goal. He's been awesome. He's been stoning the Rangers at every chance, and their defense is just fantastic. So I'm not surprised the Devils have been playing so well. What's wrong with the Rangers? Well, defense is terrible. They can't kill a penalty. Their power play is awful. Basically, the Rangers season has gone down the tube since the Olympic break.
I agree with you. I think a few key points to these games are penalties. Rangers have no power play kill, and they're not going to win. It seemed during that first game, like every single time they were on a power play, whenever they took a shot, it went in.
And they also took a ton of terrible penalties.
The defense on the Rangers has to be aware of those rebound shots because in the NHL, that's how most of the goals are scored, off these rebound shots, and that seems to be how the Devils are making it, especially during the power play.
Yeah.
All right, guys, next question. After the Game 1 loss, the Rangers decided to start Kevin Weeks in Game 2 over Henrik Lundqvist. Was this a smart move by the Rangers, and why?
Oh, this is definitely a smart move. Lundqvist, he didn't play that good in the first game, and with Weeks, back in 2002, he beat the Devils in the first round and led the Carolina Hurricanes to their first Stanley Cup appearance. Even though they lost to the Detroit Red Wings, Weeks has had a good record against the Devils. It was definitely a good move.
Well, the only reason why I would think it's a good move because of what Brian said, Weeks playing for Carolina and beating the Devils in New Jersey a couple of times in that series in 2002. That's the only reason why I would have considered the move. First of all, it was not Lundqvist's fault that the Rangers lost that game on Saturday. Their defense has just been pitiful. It has been awful. And the Devils have been getting great score opportunities on Lundqvist. And Lundqvist, he could only do so much. And Brian knows this from playing for the Wales Patriots, a team that also struggled defensively. Right, Brian? I mean, when you're in net, you can only do so much sometimes, especially in that Rample game, right?
There's only so much you can do, Dave.
Yeah, so that's been the Rangers' problem. I know Weeks, the Rangers still didn't win game 2. They lost 4-1. Yeah, because the Rangers had a good second period. That's the only reason why this game was a little closer than the last time.
I agree. I think Weeks has that little advantage because of experience against the Devils. But Lundqvist was injured. It was a slight injury or whatever. They gave him time off. That could be something. I'm not really sure.
Lundqvist is still the better goalie, in my opinion. Much better.
I agree. All right, guys, next question. Rangers are without Jágr and Kasparaitis due to injuries. How much of a difference would they have made in Game 2 and why?
I think they wouldn't have made that much of a difference, the Devils, they're playing so well right now, but I don't think the Jágr and Kasparaitis being back would be the difference between a win and a loss.
I still think the Devils would have won that game, but when you have a 5-on-3 power play for 2 minutes and you're missing your best power play scorer in Jaromir Jágr, I think it definitely would have made a difference. The Devils, first of all, they had a great penalty kill yesterday. When you're going against a 5-on-3 and you clear the puck out of your zone 5 times, you know you're doing something right. That was just fantastic. And Kasparaitis, he's the Rangers' best defenseman. He's very physical. I think he would have helped that out a little bit. The Rangers may have been in the game a little bit more, but I still think the Devils are the better team.
Okay, I agree that I think the Rangers possibly would have won Game 2 if they would have had both of these players. I'm talking 100% though. Jágr, after the Olympic Games, he got hurt. It wasn't the same, but if you look pre-Olympics...
Same with Lundqvist, tiring.
If you look pre-Olympics, he was on fire. I mean, he's got the experience. He leads this team, and that's, I think, would have helped them put him over the edge in the game.
I think Jágr really missed Pruka a lot.
I agree. All right, last question, guys. Rangers are down 2-0 in this series, which is moving to Madison Square Garden, Rangers home ice. Do you think Rangers have any chance in the season, or are they basically done?
I think they still have a chance. It's still not over yet. They still got 2 games. Devils still got 2 games to win, and the next 2 games are in Madison Square Garden. So, Devils just have to stay focused and make sure that those 2 wins don't go to their head.
Well, Rangers were 1-5 at the CAA this year so far. They were against the Devils. Rangers are 3-1 at the Garden against the Devils. I think the Rangers have a shot. I think the fans will really get behind them. There won't be the Devils fans at the Garden because the Rangers fans buy all those tickets. So I think hopefully that will motivate the Rangers because the Rangers don't want to embarrass themselves at the end of the year.
I'm saying Devils in 5. All right, thanks, guys. Good conversation. We'll be back with more drill talking about basketball playoffs, Nets and Pacers after this.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Matt Riding Dirty Dubow and David Suntup. Now we're going to talk about the Nets versus Pacers first round series. The Pacers beat the Nets last night. They're in the lead 2-1. Why were the Pacers able to win, and what went wrong for the Nets?
I think the biggest thing that went wrong for the Nets was their defense. They played terrible defense, and they allowed the returning Stojakovic, who's still kind of injured, tear apart the field. I mean, that was it. Basically, from the field, they had no defense. Didn't help them that Jermaine O'Neal had 37 points. That's never going to help you out when you're trying to win. And also, they didn't really work as a team like we were saying in Game 2 they did. I mean, they weren't passing the ball great. They weren't looking for the open shots, and they were kind of pressuring themselves into these bad shots.
Well, the Nets were fantastic in the first half. They had a 4-point lead. In the second half, Jermaine O'Neal just dominated. He was awesome. He was scoring from inside, scoring from outside, doing everything. The Nets just couldn't stop him. In the first 2 games, Jason Collins did a great job playing defense on him. In the third game, Jason Collins was not able to do anything to stop him. Anthony Johnson also had the game of his life, and same with Steven Jackson. They were hitting shots from the perimeter, something they didn't do in Game 2, and that's where the Nets were able to clam up on Jermaine O'Neal. So that's what they have to do is they really have to guard Jermaine O'Neal tightly, and then they have to get out there and make sure they can get a hand in the face of the perimeter shooters. But defense, and then they weren't looking for good shots. They were taking bad shots, and when they did get easy shots, they were missing them.
Marking up was a big problem in last night's game. Pacers shot 52% from the field. What can the Nets do to improve on their defense?
Really, they have to stop Jermaine O'Neal because that's what's taking the pressure away from the field. If they could stop the post game, which is really Jermaine O'Neal, then they could put more pressure on the offenses shooting from the field, make them take bad shots, uncomfortable shots, rush to shots, which is going to allow them to get more rebounds. They also have to cut down on the other team's offensive rebounds, which I saw quite a few of those last night, and giving them a second chance is not going to help you at all. You have to stop that.
Well, what the Nets have to do is they have to double Jermaine O'Neal in the post, I would put Collins on Jermaine O'Neal, and then maybe have Chris to chop him out, or maybe one of the guards, Kidd or Carter, play help defense. But if Jermaine O'Neal kicks the ball out to Jackson or Johnson or Stojakovic, but Stojakovic didn't play that much last night, they have to get out there and defend those shots. I mean, they can't just stand out there. They have to be quick. They have to try to create turnovers. They have to be aggressive, because what the Nets like to do is, I know they have a better half-court game now than they used to. They like to get out on the break and score, and they have to do that by getting defensive rebounds and creating turnovers. And they didn't do that last night.
Jermaine O'Neal scored 37 points, 15 rebounds, game 3. Terrific job he did. What should the Nets do to shut him down specifically?
It's very hard to shut down Jermaine O'Neal. He's quite the monster. But what you have to do is hold him to 20 points, because, if you hold him to 20 points or less, you have the ability to win pretty easily. The problem was last night Anthony Johnson was also on his game, trying to get a little revenge from the Nets not signing him back to free agency. But I think what they have to do is turnovers, just like Dave said. They have to force some more turnovers, move the game a little, pick up the pace of the game a little quicker, get their fast break going, because by doing that, you're eliminating some of the post game, and you're making Jermaine O'Neal a little bit more tired by running him up and down the court, which I think will help.
Well, they have to be really aggressive with him. Jason Collins, he has to be pounding him. Take a foul or two if you can. I know Jason Collins getting foul trouble a lot, but you have to pick your spots. You have to be aggressive. Make him earn every point. Don't let him get any easy baskets. And that's really have to play physical, because sometimes they're not physical enough. But if they're physical with Jermaine O'Neal and they cover him and one of the guards comes, I think the Nets will have a good chance to shut him down.
The Nets play Game 4 in Indianapolis Saturday afternoon. Is Game 4 a must-win for the Nets?
Without a doubt, it's a must-win. You don't want the pressure of having to win. No choice. You have to win going home for a Game 5. I mean, I understand it's hard to win away, especially in Indiana, but I mean, if they don't win this, their reputation as a serious playoff contender is gone. They're going to be fighting to stay alive, and even if they do somehow manage to win, the next team's going to take them almost as a joke.
Well, is it a must-win? I'm going to say no, because the Nets still have 2 more home games left, and they're proven. This is a streaky ball club here. They can go on a run at any given time. But would it be nice to win this game? Definitely, because then you're 2-2. You can go back to New Jersey, hopefully get a game there, and hopefully be an advantage of this series. It won't hurt the Nets in this series if they went back 3-1 and won the last 3 games. But if you're thinking ahead to the next series, which could possibly be Miami or Chicago, the Nets would be tired if they played 7 games. So you can't think about Miami or Chicago right now. You just have to focus on Indianapolis, because the Nets have their hands full with the Pacers. But it's going to be tough to win Game 4, because the Conseco Field is a very tough place to play, because those Pacer fans can be really loud, and the Nets haven't played well there over the years.
Thanks, guys. That wraps up this week's edition of The Drill. Tune in next week on Show 26 when we recap NFL Draft, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and Major League Baseball.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season, and I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
In America, he is a citizen here, so it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
How can they get it?
Say, because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this.
Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the 30-Minute Drill. Today we're going to be talking about the NFL Draft and recapping it, who got better, who got worse. I'm Andrew Gayo. I'm here with my guest, Alex Penn. So now, if we're going to talk about the NFL Draft here, many teams, notoriously the Houston Texans, passing up on Reggie Bush. How did you feel about this move?
Well, I really don't like the decision now. You look at Mario Williams, he really is a tremendous talent, but not every day you're going to find a player with the abilities that Reggie Bush has. He pretty much do everything for you. I think he's going to be pretty much like a LaDainian Tomlinson in the league. Now you look at Mario Williams, you always got to help the defense out. Getting a big defensive end, it's always going to help you put a little pressure on the quarterback. But if you don't have a quality running back that could draw defense's attention, it's really not going to help. No, nothing against Dominic Davis. I think he's a pretty good running back. But not every day is a Reggie Bush going to come around the corner.
No, he's something that you just don't see every day. I mean, especially when he has the potential to run back kicks, be the everyday running back, even be a good receiver. No, you just don't pass him up, and I think the Texans made an awful move by, even before the draft, the day before, they basically had an agreement to sign that contract with Mario Williams. Now the second pick goes to the New Orleans Saints. They get Reggie Bush. How's their situation now dealing with Deuce McAllister and Reggie Bush?
Well, you look at the situation, and Deuce McAllister, he's always been a consistent back in the league. He's been a little injury prone in the last few seasons. But I think that the Saints really upgraded. You don't know what they're going to do with McAllister. Maybe they'll trade him, get another quality player. But on an overall basis, they've really improved in this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, it shook up the whole draft because a lot of people thought they were going to get Liner, but then all of a sudden they signed Drew Brees from the San Diego Chargers. So now you look at them and they upgraded greatly at that position because Aaron Brooks, let's just face it, his better days are behind him. Third pick, Tennessee Titans. A lot of people are criticizing them for not taking Matt Leinart. They took Vince Young from the Texas Longhorns. How did you see this pick fitting in with the Titans? Because if you look at all the top 10 teams in this draft, the team that Young fit in most was the Titans.
Well, you look at the Titans and their former quarterback, Steve McNair. They pretty much have the same image now. You look at Young, he's a bigger body, but McNair had the ability to run. And that's what Vince Young really had a great attribute at the University of Texas. So I think that he's a perfect fit. Tennessee really had a tremendous draft. They had Lendell White. I think he's a little overrated, but he's still a big name back. He can be effective in the NFL. So Tennessee, another team that got a big upgrade in the offseason.
Now the New York Jets drafting Brickshaw Ferguson at the number 4 pick, number 1 overall for them. How do you? I mean, obviously, this was the safe choice. A lot of people were upset, Jet fans particularly, that they didn't get Matt Leinart. But if you look at the facts, if they draft Matt Leinart, they would lose either way because, I mean, he's a good player and all, but they didn't have a line to protect him. I mean, they could have built one via free agency, but it would have been tough. The Brickshaw was the safe choice because it gave him an anchor on the line for maybe the next 5 to 10 seasons because he's the real deal. I mean, you don't find just like Reggie Bush, you don't find a player like that. You don't find a 6'8", 350-pound guy so often, correct?
Well, they usually say that you could always find the bum to play guard, but you always need a quality tackle. And it pretty much stays for the left tackle to protect the quarterback on his blind side. And the Brickshaw Ferguson really is going to be a star in this league. We saw Robert Gallery's instant presence in Oakland. And, you know, everyone's saying, well, the Jets, they could have taken Matt Leinart. And I think he would have fit in well also. I mean, he has that New York image. He's a young, good-looking guy. Could have been like a Broadway Joe. But this really was a safe pick for the New York Jets.
Now, question. Why did you steal that quote from Trey Wingo about finding a bum at guard? That's come on now. You're better than that. Taking quotes.
Well, I like taking quotes from cartoons, maybe like the Rugrats. But this quote just stuck out in my mind.
Interesting. You know, you gotta give him credit next time, though. You know, source him. But any other picks in this draft? We're running out of time here. Alex Penn's telling me to stop. How many other picks in this draft did you see that notorious, like either really good or really bad?
Well, I'm a Dolphin fan, so I'm going to stick with that pick. I like Jason Allen. Now, many people forget how good Tennessee was. They had a really tough season last year. Jason Allen, he was very injured, but in the combine, he really ran a good 40-yard dash. So I think that this guy could be a good safety corner in this league. 6'1", 210 pounds.
And quickly, New York Giants, Sonoris Moss, he's the real deal in my mind. Hopefully, punt returner, goes to the Pro Bowl next year. Giants win the Super Bowl next year. We'll be back in a moment talking about the Yankees, Red Sox. Don't go away. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week. Today, we're going to be talking about the New York baseball Yankees. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Matthew Royce, Clayton Taylor are with me. So now, New York Yankees standing at 13-11, second place in the American League East, one game behind the Boston Red Sox, who lead the East. pitching has been better for the Yankees, which in the beginning of the season, first couple of games, it's been a problem. And the offense, it's gone from scoring 12 runs a game to now averaging 6 runs a game. So how do you see the Yankees so far in the third week?
Well, it's really positive that the New York Yankees get back Aaron Small last year. He really was a tremendous pitcher. I think he was around 10-0 last year. And whenever he was on the hill, you felt confident. And you really can't expect the Yankees to average 12 runs a game throughout the whole season. Now, you look with that lineup, many people will say they should be scoring around 12 every game. But it's a long season for the New York Yankees. And there's going to be times where they can't hit the ball. There's going to be other games where it's all going to click together, and they're just going to run teams off the field. So I think that the Yankees right now are in a pretty good situation.
Now, do you think it is more important for the Yankees, instead of scoring 12 runs a game, to do the little things, to have some of their batters, not the hitters that you expect to hit home runs all the time, but the smaller guys to do the little things like a hit and run, maybe even get A-Rod to do a couple hit and runs, drop down a couple bunts? What do you think they should start doing that?
Well, we like that right last year to the Chicago White Sox, and what they did is they played small ball. Now at the Yankees lineup, they have all these power hitters, all these all-star names, and if you want to compare it directly to the White Sox, they didn't have many power hitters, but they simply got the job done. And when there was a guy on third base with less than 2 outs, they hit fly balls that were deep enough to score him. So I think the Yankees, even with the power, got to play a little small ball as well.
Oh, yes. But no, that's a good point. Small ball is the key to winning, because you look in the 90s when they started to play that National League style, and they would win ball games doing that way. Now we're going to look at their bullpen. Mike Myers, they acquired especially to go after those lefty hitters, those tough ones, Big Papi, David Ortiz. The other night, they put him in there, gives up a home run to him. Do you think Mike Myers is going to come around, or do you think he was a mistake?
Well, I like picking up Mike Myers. It's always good to have a lefty in your bullpen. There's something that the Yankees lacked last year throughout the season, and it seemed like even Ortiz is still killing them, but it's always good to have that reliable lefty in the bullpen that when you're facing a big power lefty hitter, you got someone that kind of evens up the power matchup.
Yeah, it is a good acquisition, because you rather have Mike Myers than not have any lefty in the lineup, especially him, throws deceptive, throws sidearm, and he really tops out at like 82 miles an hour anyway, so you never know with him. Other people in the bullpen, you look at Kyle Farnsworth, Aaron Small, now Jarrett Wright. Do you see the Yankees bullpen being solidified throughout the whole season, or do you think it's going to be a consistent problem?
Well, personally, I don't like Jarrett Wright in the bullpen. Kyle Farnsworth throwing around 100 miles an hour. I really like him. They always got Mr. Reliable, Mariano Rivera, to close games out. And I think that the Yankee bullpen has improved since last season. I mean, I know they lost Tom Gordon. Getting rid of Quantrill really was a good move. He was just awful last season. So I think that the Yankees' problem with the last few years has been the pitching. And when they kept winning those titles from that 96 to 2000 run, it was the bullpen where they can go to Mariano Rivera, to John Wetland. And I think that the Yankees, they don't have that dominating setup man yet, but maybe Farnsworth can become that.
Yeah, he's going to have to, because if they want to go back to the dominance, he's young, he throws hard, and that's what the Yankees are going to need, because if we go back to the 96 season, Mariano was young and he threw hard and he's had a Wetland. And after Wetland left, Mariano took over, and we've seen what Mariano's done. He's basically put himself into the Hall of Fame and into the record books. Now, quickly, one more thing. The rotation, how do you see that faring throughout the season with a healthy Randy Johnson and a healthy Sean Chacon?
Well, Johnson really has been inconsistent in his first 4 or 5 starts, but you could tell right from the beginning of the game if he's going to be sharp or not, if that slider is cutting in on those righty hitters, if his fastball, how fast it's going, maybe around 95. Since he was in his prime, his fastball has lost a few miles an hour, but it's still good enough to strike batters out. And Mike Messina, he's really been solid throughout the season. Sean Chacon last season really was tremendous, picking him up in Colorado. First few starts really wasn't that good, and since he's been tremendous for the Yankees. So I think that their rotation, as long as it's healthy, can hold up.
Yeah, that's going to be the key for them, because rotation's good, Yankees good. Rotation's bad, they have to look for help on the free agent market and either trade or find prospects, particularly Phillip Hughes. He's the main prospect for them. Thank you for joining us this week. Now we're going to turn it over to David Suntup, who's going to talk about the Mets, NHL, and whatever else goes through his little mind that he wants to talk about. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew Axelband and David Suntup. Today we're going to talk about the New York Mets. The Mets took 2 out of 3 in Atlanta over the weekend. How big was this series win, and how do you think the series win in Atlanta will help the Mets' confidence?
They have been struggling to beat the Braves. They've been 2 out of 3. They lost the last 8-5. They played very well, and the Mets' confidence, well, it's going to be a big boost because they know that they can beat the Atlanta now.
Definitely a huge series when they won 2 out of 3 in Atlanta. Last year, they played 9 games in Atlanta. They were 1-8 at Turner Field, and they got swept 2 times. The reason why they won this series, pitching. Pedro Martinez was lights out. He had great location, great movement on his pitches. He got the big outs when he needed to. He threw a lot of heat. He struck out a ton of batters. The only mistake that he made was the hanging pitch to Chipper Jones. The Chipper Jones hit for a home run. Tom Glavine, 7 shutout innings against the Braves. He struggled against them early in his Mets career, but the last year, he's really done well against the Braves. He really pitched great, and the bullpen's been great. Billy Wagner was able to get the saves. Donner Sanchez and Aaron Hamlin came in, pitched very well in the 8th innings, and the Mets, they got their runs where they needed to. David Wright got big hits in the first game, and the second game, Paul Duca hit his first home run of the year, which was a big hit, and all Tom Glavine needed to win the game.
You know, we can see a weak spot for the Mets. Brian Bannister is on the disabled list. He's got an injured hamstring. How much will this injury affect the Mets, and can John Maine do a good job filling in for him?
Brian Bannister was a great player to the Mets bullpen. It's going to affect the Mets a lot, I think. He could pitch well, he could hit very well, but he hurt his hamstring, so it's going to be a big injury. But John Maine, I don't think he can fill Brian Bannister's spot. Maybe if we give him some more time, he can fill it, but we need Bannister back.
This is definitely a huge loss. First of all, the Mets do not have a lot of depth in their rotation. Second of all, Bannister, well, in a couple of his starts, his location, he didn't have really good control on a lot of his starts. Like, he was starting to pitch a little bit better. He was giving them solid innings, and he was winning a lot of games because he was keeping the Mets in games, and that's what he was asked to do. And also, what Andrew touched on, he's been hitting the ball pretty well. He got a hit in his first Major League start in San Francisco. He got 2 doubles, and he drove in a couple of runs. He actually got hurt running the bases. I was a little worried about that because he was running a little too hard. He tried to go for a triple on a double, even though he held up. But then I knew something could have been wrong. This is a huge injury because they don't have a lot of depth. But I think John Maine could step in and do a pretty decent job. He's pitched well in AAA. He pitched for the Orioles last year a little bit. He didn't do as well, but he definitely has good stuff. And he's pitching against the Nationals his first start. Not a big offense, not a really good offensive team. But against the Braves in his second start, I'd be a little worried. But if John Maine can't fill in, if the Mets have an injury problem down the road, maybe Mike Pelfrey gets a call up. He just got promoted to Binghamton, and he pitched 5 1/3 scoreless innings. Pitched very well.
We've now moved into May. The Mets had a great season so far. Finished April with 16-8. A lot of players contributed to this Mets team. Who would you say was the Mets player of the month?
My player of the month would be Pedro Martinez. He went 5-0. He had a great start. He pitched very well and the record is 16-8 now. And I think he contributed the most out of this team.
I'm going to have Carlos Delgado. Other than the last 3 games, the series in Atlanta where he struggled mightily, he was fantastic for this team, getting big hit after big hit. He really carried this offense because there were times where Floyd was hurt, Beltran was hurt, Floyd wasn't hitting well, David Wright the last week and a half of April, he wasn't hitting well. He really carried this team. Delgado was fantastic. He hit 9 home runs. He drove in about 20 runs. He was hitting at a 321 rate. He was just fantastic, so it has to go to Delgado.
Thanks, guys. Stick around because when we come back, we're going to recap the Devils-Rangers series.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Andrew Axelband. Today's guests, Rossman and Dave Suntup. Today we will be talking about the Devils-Rangers series. The Devils stunned the New York Rangers by sweeping them 4-0. What did the Devils do right in this series to just flat out embarrass the New York Rangers?
Well, their offense was just stupendous. Elias, Matt, and Gianta, they worked so well together. Cam Jansen came up very big with a lot of big hits, and their goaltending, Marty, was just outstanding this series. They definitely deserve to win.
Well, Brian, taking some vocab from the guru here, I like to use that word a lot, stupendous, but getting back to the point, first of all, Martin Brodeur was just a brick wall in that the Rangers couldn't get anything past him. The Devils had an awesome penalty kill. They killed 5-on-3 penalties when they were down 2 men. They were fantastic. When the Devils had a power play, they always took advantage of having the extra man. They really made the Rangers look silly when the Rangers were trying to kill penalties. And the Devils, they really passed the puck well. They moved the puck well. They play as a team. They don't have a lot of stars. Well, they have a star in net and they have a star in Gianta. Those are the two stars on this
And
team.
also Gomez, he's a big star.
I wouldn't call them a superstar. Gianta and Brodeur, I consider the only superstars on this team. But the other guys, they play as a team, they play as one, and that's what wins games. And they scored goals. They got the Rangers out of it early, and the Rangers just didn't show up in this series. They didn't really have a lot of motivation in this series, it seemed like.
All right. Jaromir Jagr re-injured his shoulder after taking an early hit in the first period of Game 4. Do you think that it was a good idea to start him after his injury?
No, he after Game 3, his performance was very poor. There was one point in the game where they were on a power play, and Jagr had it at the point. And any hockey player would tell you to shoot the puck. That was the perfect time, but he didn't have the power to. His shoulder was still bothering him, and he injured it now. It might be injured a lot. They said it was injured a lot worse than they already thought. So you got to worry about what's going to happen next year to him.
Well, you definitely have to worry because I know he's a little older. But first of all, I know he was I know he was hurting and such. But this is Game 4. Okay, if you lose this game, you're done. If he was healthy enough to play, or even a little bit healthy enough to play, he has to be out there because it's the last game of the year. You have to leave everything out on the line, unless they're down like 5-0 in the game. Then you don't play him. But if you're in a tie game, you have to play him, and you have to give everything you got because I'm sure even Jagr at 60% is better than a lot of the Rangers players in terms of scoring goals.
All right. In your opinion, do you think that the Rangers didn't play to their full potential, or were the Devils just a tough opponent?
Well, the Rangers, they lost a lot of key players in this series. They played with what they had. They played their hearts out, and the Devils, they just outplayed them. They were all over the ice. They were covering their men perfectly. Burrow was playing outstanding. They were finding ways to score, and they were capitalizing very well.
Well, the Rangers definitely didn't play to their potential. Henrik Lundqvist in January was in full season form. It was just fantastic. Ever since the Olympic break, a lot of guys got tired. Lundqvist got tired. Kasparaitis was tired. Jagr was tired. So they were just, ever since the Olympic break, ever since they won that game against the Flyers, the first game back, and then lost to the Devils, that 3-2 game, ever since that game, their season just went down the drains. They were just horrible. They couldn't score goals.
Yeah.
They were losing games that they should be winning. They lost to some bad teams on the stretch, like the Islanders and the Penguins, and they just totally tanked. And they were getting blown out by the good teams, like the Flyers, the Senators, the Devils. So they definitely didn't play their potential. Jagr wasn't playing well. Pruko wasn't doing much. So they weren't scoring goals. They weren't scoring on the power play like they like to. And then awful penalty kills. So they definitely didn't play their potential. But tip your cap to the Devils because the Devils are just fantastic in this series. They made the Rangers look awful.
All right, one quick question. How far do you think the Devils are going in the playoffs?
The way they're playing right now, they look like they're just unbeatable. I'm saying, I'm predicting a Stanley Cup champion here for the Devils. I don't know.
Rossman, that looks
Bold
too
well.
high.
Well, the top 4 teams in the West could be out of it if Anaheim beats Calgary. But I'm going to say they beat the Canes because the Devils have been playing really well. I'm going to say Devils in 6 in that series. But when it comes time to play the Senators in Ottawa, I know 2003 the Devils won, but I think Ottawa's going to get over the hump this year.
All right, thanks, Brian and Dave. Stick around as we talk about the Nets playoff run.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew the Axelband and David the Guru Suntup. Guys, now we're going to recap the Nets series against the Pacers and preview their series against the Heat. After Game 3, the Nets were down 2-1 in the series, and Indiana was clearly playing better. The Nets went on to win the next 3 games to win the series in 6 games. What did the Nets do differently in Game 4 through 6 to win the series?
Well, they passed the ball a lot better. They shot better, and Jefferson, Carter, and Kidd, they all worked very well together. Their defense was pretty well, but their passing and the shooting was mostly why they won.
Well, their defense was just fantastic in the last 3 games of this series. I know Anthony Johnson was on fire in this series, but they limited the damage like the other players did, and now it's key. Jared O'Neal, while he played well in the last couple of games, he had to work for everything that he did. And that's clearly, we're a lot smarter in the last couple of games. They were really taking good shots. Vince Carter, while he's a fantastic player, sometimes he takes a lot of bad shots, but he took mostly good shots. Jason Kidd, I know he didn't score a lot in the last 2 games, but he set his teammates up, and that's what counts. And he was also got a ton of rebounds and played great defense. Richard Jefferson making timely defensive plays, and Nenad Kristic, which is playing fantastic in this series.
Nets won Game 6, 96-90. What did the Nets do well down the stretch to win? And can they carry that into their series against Miami?
I don't think they can carry it into, well, they can carry it into Miami, but I think Miami's going to win in maybe 6 games. But what the Nets did, they played it a lot better. They worked all together. But it's going to be tough playing against like Shaquille O'Neal and Dwayne Wade.
What the Nets did well is they played great defense. Richard Jefferson helped defense after Anthony Johnson shot up a brick. Richard Jefferson comes out of nowhere to stuff Jermaine O'Neal. Basically, the biggest defensive play of the season so far. It basically eliminated the Pacers from the playoffs. Nikola Krstić hitting clutch shot after clutch shot. And also, last year, he wasn't really a good foul shooter. But this year, second year in the league, he's really shot well from the free throw line, especially in the fourth quarter, which is key. Vince Carter making a lot of clutch shots and playing smart. Yeah. And the rebounding. Jason Kidd running halfway across the court for rebounds. You know, halfway, it's the sideways, halfway across the court. So it's about hustle. You have to, those hustle plays are in the box score. But that's what counts in games like this. And that's what the Nets did, and that helped them put over the top. Right. I think they could definitely carry it to Miami because the Nets were 3-1 against the Heat this year. We'll talk about that more in the next couple of questions.
Anthony Johnson scored 40 points in Game 6. Jermaine O'Neal definitely dominated most of the series. So how are the Nets going to be able to contain Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal?
I don't really care that Anthony Johnson scored 40 points or Jermaine O'Neal dominated. The Nets won, that's it. Anthony Johnson, he was Jason Kidd's backup when he was on the Nets, and he played very well in this game, but I don't think the Nets will be able to contain Dwayne Wade and Shaq as much as they did in the regular season. As I said before, I think the Heat will win in 6 games.
Well, Andrew, if you were Lawrence Frank, how would you try to contain Shaq and Dwayne Wade?
I'd put 2 men on him, 2 men on Shaq, and try and get him to foul trouble.
Yeah, well, the refs aren't giving Shaq the generous calls that they used to because these NBA refs some of them are awful, especially back in, I believe, 2002 when the Lakers played the Kings and how many calls Shaq got. And the NBA Finals night, so it was ridiculous. The refs basically wanted the Lakers to win. But anyways, the Nets have to double Shaq. They have to make him earn every point because they need to get Shaq in foul trouble like the Bulls did in Games 3 and 4. Because once Shaq was on the bench, the Bulls totally took over, and that's what the Nets have to do. With Dwayne Wade, guys have to be ready to help. They have to play great help defense. Dwayne Wade, he's so great because he could drive to the hole, he could shoot the outside jumper, so they really have to contain him, make him work for everything. They have to play physical like they did in the first couple of games. So I think if they play physical, they play smart, and they hustle for 48 minutes, I think they could stop Dwayne Wade and Shaq.
Guys, obviously, Nets are playing Heat. Will they win the game in the series?
Like I said before, the Heat is a very good team. Slow the Nets, but the Heat, they always play to win, and they will beat the Nets probably in 6 games. Yeah, that's what I think.
Andrew, I know the Heat always play to win, but I'm sure the Nets always play to win too. Don't forget that. But back to the question. Shaq has just been great in the playoffs in general throughout his career, But the thing that's going to help out the Nets is the Heat had to play a lot of tough games on the stretch because they were playing for home court. They didn't have a great start to this year, so they couldn't really rest Shaq. And then also Shaq had to play a tough series against Chicago. So I'm going to say Heat in 7 because they have Shaq and Wade. I just think the Heat are a pretty good team. But I think the Nets have a really good shot to win the series because the Heat are as good as last year, and the Nets are a lot better than last year.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to have to stop you
Heat in
here.
7, but hopefully the Nets win this series.
Dave, I'm going to have to stop you here. I'm sorry. Thanks, guys. Tune us in next week on Show 27. We talk about the Nets, Devils playoffs runs, and more Major League Baseball.
LSU. And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season. And I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
In America, you know, he is a citizen here, so, you know, it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
Could say because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
Tournaments in this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More through Axelband.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the 30-Minute Drill, Show 27 here. Baseball, other sports, hockey, NBA playoffs. We got a lot to talk about this week. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Right here next to me, Matthew Pumbaa Taylor's now. So we were talking about the Yankees, Red Sox. Red Sox won the series 2-1 so far this week. Big blow for the Yankees. Hideki Matsui breaking his wrist, out for 3 months. How is this injury going to affect the Yankees in the short run and the long run?
Well, obviously, it's going to take away from the Yankees lineup. Hideki Matsui, you always like having a lefty in Yankee Stadium, really could put it over that 314 porch and right. And now they got to fill him with Bubba Crosby, and he really had an instant presence pretty much in the field in this Boston, the third game of the series. He robbed the home run away. And I think that Crosby probably is a better fielder than Hideki Matsui, but really no comparison with the bat in the lineup. It's going to take away a lot. But the Yankees, with the lineup they have, they should still be able to put up runs.
Now the problem in the short term right now, we look, Gary Sheffield's on the disabled list, and now Hideki Matsui. So right now they're starting Bernie Williams in right field, and probably in left field is going to be Bubba Crosby, and they're going to try to spell Melky Cabrera sometime. So it's very young and inexperienced, and then you got Bernie Williams out there who's old, and he's not really that mobile anymore. Really, Johnny Damon's the only one that's been in there since opening day. So that's going to be a thing for the Yankees to see how they overcome the adversity of playing without the two best outfielders. Now we look at the other things. In this series, particularly Randy Johnson, what happened to him walking 5 guys in almost 5 innings? What is his problem, and is this dangerous for the Yankees if he has a 5 ERA and he's throwing his fastball at 86 miles an hour?
Well, you look at Randy Johnson, it's not even relating just back to this Boston game. It's been pretty much the last 2 years since he's come to New York, really inconsistent. Now, there will be days where he's been pitching gems. This year, he's only had 1 or 2 games where you could say, this is the old Randy Johnson, the one that could strike out 20 batters in a game. Now, what his problem is you can't find the strike zone, and when you're getting behind guys 2-0, 3-0, it's going to spell trouble, especially if you get that leadoff guy on. In the major leagues, guys are going to be able to capitalize, especially his fastball. In the prime of his career, it was in the high 90s, now low 90s, maybe high 80s. So I think that Johnson's really got to find the zone, get that first pitch over, and then pitch off that.
Now, Matthew, he has been classified as a non-New York type of guy, that he cannot pitch in New York because he's not just that type of pitcher. He doesn't have the attitude the press likes. Every time he gets interviewed, he seems to have a snotty attitude. Do you think this fit before they signed him, right before they signed him, you thought it was a good fit, and now what do you think of it presently?
Well, I think George Steinbrenner, when he signed Randy Johnson, was looking for the pitcher, not the guy that deals with the press. Now you look at some of the Yankee signings. Johnny Damon really was a perfect fit for New York. He already had to play under the pressure of the Boston lights. It's just as tough to play in Boston than it is in New York. Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, these guys love the media. They look at Randy Johnson, he's more to himself. He kind of has a dull attitude, dull personality. So I think that maybe a little time away from the media would help him, because every time you pick up a New York newspaper after a game that he pitches, everything's just bashing him. So I think that maybe he needs a little alone time and just get back to the basics of pitching.
Now, Alex Rodriguez, I just want to talk about this man because he's aggravating me. Let's just keep it at that. Besides the home run he hit off Kurt Schilling, I think that's the only thing that he's done in his Yankee career that's actually clutch, because every single time he gets a homer, it seems that they're up at least by 10 runs. And when the clutch situation happens, he folds up like a piece of paper. What is his problem, and is he going to overcome this at all? I mean, because they're going to need him in October.
Well, he sure isn't Reggie Jackson or Derek Jeter when it comes to getting big hits in big situations. And you're right, it totally seems like Alex Rodriguez gets hits when they're up 10 runs against Tampa and Kansas City. And even this series versus Boston, he wasn't a slump previously, and I think he might be getting out of that. Last night in Game 3, he had a good game. He had a few hits. He had the home run against Kurt Schilling in the second game of the series. But Alex Rodriguez really is a valuable player. Now, moving from shortstop to third base really is a tough move. Third base, one of the toughest positions to play in baseball, the hot corner, and he's adjusted very well. He's a Gold Glove third baseman now. He's always going to be a candidate to hit 40 home runs a year. So I think that A-Rod's just got to, when it comes to the postseason, gets swing for singles, not home runs anymore.
Yeah, he is a head case. I mean, he's got to overcome that if they want to be successful. If he's successful, the team's going to be successful. We will be right back, turning it over to David Suntup. I don't even know what he's talking about, so we're going to surprise you. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Show 27. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew the Axelband and David Suntup. Now we're going to talk about the New York Mets. The Mets are coming off a 5-2 week where they took 3 of the 4 against the Nats, Pirates, and they won another series against the Braves by winning the first 2 games of the series. What did you think about the Mets this week?
Well, Ryan, this is one of the greatest teams in this league right now. They've been playing extremely well. I haven't seen a Mets team like this in years. They beat the Braves. That's very good. The Nats, pretty easy win. The Pirates, pretty easy win again, but they are having a great start.
Well, the Mets were basically fantastic this week, except for 2 games where they had 2 pitchers who weren't in their rotation pitching. Carlos Delgado winning the game on Wednesday with a walk-off homer in the 14th inning. Pedro Martinez and Tom Glavine continuing their great pitching. Tom Glavine throwing a ton of strikes, really pitching well. Pedro, he pitched really well, except Billy Wagner blew the save in the 9th inning, so Pedro couldn't get his 6th win of the year. And then Carlos Beltran, he came back last week. He hit 4 home runs this week. He was just totally on fire. David Wright snapped out of his slump. So the Mets are really playing well. And also, Dwaner Sanchez and Aaron Heilman continued their great pitching out of the pen.
Victor Zambrano is going to be out for the rest of the season with a torn elbow and his pitching arm. And now the Mets have Brian Bannister, John Maine, and Victor Zambrano on the DL. Who can the Mets count on to fill in the pitching? And do the Mets have enough traded for them to help?
I don't think these people will come back. They need to trade up. Victor Zambrano, he was a key player to this team. Brian Bannister was. He also was a great hitter. But the bullpen, if they want to get more pitchers and win a lot more games, they need to get like a better pitcher. So I think they have to trade up for a better one.
Well, I think they will eventually need to make a trade for someone. But they have Jeremy Gonzalez in Norfolk. He's pitching okay, but I don't really think he's a long-term solution. He's more of a 1 or 2 start guy solution. They have Mike Pelfrey. He was a 9th pick in last year's draft. He's pitching in Double-A Binghamton, but I want to keep him there because this is his first year out of college, and it wouldn't be right to rush him because he has to get his innings. And they also have Alay Solar, his first year over from Cuba. They have 2 guys with a lot of potential, but they should be staying in the minors where they belong. But other than that, Barry Zito, possibility for trading. Livan Hernandez, Aaron Seeley. Aaron Seeley wouldn't cost that much, but the other 2 guys would. So it's going to be really tough. If this injury happened in July, it'll be easier because it's trading deadline, but it's really early to have these injury problems in May.
Wait, Dave, who do you think they might trade for?
I just said Barry Zito, maybe Livan Hernandez. It's going to cost them a top price. It could cost them Millage, maybe Pelfrey, maybe Humber. Dr. O's is also out there, and the Marlins are they're not afraid to trade within the division, as we've seen over the last couple of years. Al Leiter, Carlos Delgado, Paulo Duca. So it's going to be interesting. But I don't think D-Trade's coming to the Big Apple.
Yeah, they need to make one quick.
Tom Glavine improved his record 4-2. It had a great game against the Pirates last week, 7-inning shutout. What is the difference between his game this season and last season?
Well, he improved very much. He takes it 1 game at a time when he pitches. Last year he didn't pitch that well, and this year he's improved so well. It's just that what he thinks, and his mind is working very well.
Tom Glavine, the definition of a pitcher. He's not a thrower, he's a pitcher. He knows how to pitch. His fastball is not going to go over 90 miles per hour too many times, but he knows where to throw it. He throws the changeup effectively. His changeup is deadly. He mixes in a curveball here once in a while. He really started developing that pitch after the All-Star break, and he's throwing inside to hitters. He's keeping them off balance. Before he tried to throw outside, and he started not to get the calls from the umpires anymore, mainly because of the Quest Tech systems. But now he's going inside. He's going outside. He's changing his speeds really well, and he just has a ton of confidence. And he's been one of the best pitchers in the majors since the All-Star break last year.
The Mets are going on a 9-game road trip. They make stops in Philadelphia, Milwaukee, St. Louis. How do you think the Mets will play on the trip?
Well, Philadelphia, that can be an easy 3 wins. But when they get to like St. Louis, that's a really hard team. They have like Albert Pujols, and their pitching is very well. So I think St. Louis will beat the Mets 2 out of 3.
Well, I don't think Philadelphia is going to be an easy 3 games here. They've won 8 games in a row. This is a team that's totally turned it around. They lost the first 5 games of the season to start the year, and now they've won 8 in a row. So they've really turned it around. But the Mets have their 2 best pitchers going in that series, Pedro and Glavine. The Phillies have gained a lot of ground, the Mets, because of the Phillies' great play. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully the Mets could take 2 out of 3 in that series because they have 2 of their 3 best pitchers. Milwaukee, they're also a very good ball club, as we saw in April at Shea. So it'll be interesting. We're going to have 2 starters who aren't usually in a rotation going in that series. So the Mets bats will really have to hit well. The bullpen will have to be well. And hopefully Billy Wagner close out some of those games. And then St. Louis, 2 best teams in the National League so far. So it's going to be very interesting. The Mets really have to be careful because they have Pujols, they have Rolen, they have Evans, they have a lot of guys who could beat you.
Guys, thanks for being on the show. Stick around. We'll be back with more drill after this when we talk about the Nets series. Welcome back to the drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Matt, Ryan Dirty Dubow, and David Suntup. Today's topic, the NBA Eastern Conference semifinals, especially we're talking about the Nets and the Heat today. In Game 1, the Nets defeated the Heat without home court advantage with a final score of 100-88. What were some factors leading up to the huge game victory for the Nets?
Well, obviously Shaq's foul trouble is going to be a big factor. We'll get into that later, but I think he had 2 fouls just in the first few minutes of play. That's going to kill you when your big man's in foul trouble in the first quarter. But besides that, it's the speed. Nets held momentum in this game. They kept the speed up. They had a lot of fast break points. And the only people who can match the speed of the Nets on Miami is Wade and Jason Williams. And, 2 men can only do so much, especially, when they're playing on the court at the same time.
Well, to start this game, the Heat won the jump ball. Jason Williams took the ball down the court, and he went through the Nets defense and scored a layup. They were up 2-0. That's the last lead Miami had the whole game. Just imagine that. Richard Jefferson hit 2 big jump shots to get the Nets into the game. And then Carter hit a nice shot. He got fouled. Kids started shooting the lights out. They just took the crowd out of this game at the American Airlines Arena. The crowd was just totally out of it. The Nets could totally control the tempo. They shot the lights out. And then Shaquille O'Neal getting into foul trouble, like Matt said. Shaquille O'Neal is such a huge part of this team. He's such an intimidating force. When he gets 2 fouls in the beginning of the first quarter, he has to sit on the bench for most of the first half. It totally affects the rhythm of this game. And Morning's a good backup, but he's not Shaquille O'Neal at all.
First quarter, it was 38-21. Nets are controlling the momentum of the game. They're controlling everything. How important is it for the Nets to do this for the rest of the series?
I'm going to say it's vital because their speed, just like we were talking about, keeps them ahead of Miami, and that's really going to put them over the edge, allow them to win. They still have the big guys. They have Jason Collins, and he got hurt a little bit, but I think he's back, and he's doing okay. He hurt his chin a few times. Those guys can run. Even though they're big, they can run. You have Christic. He's putting up a lot of points. He's helping them out, and he's going to really allow them to compete at the slower game. But by increasing your fast break points, you're increasing the momentum of the game, and that's what they have to do with fast break points.
Well, it's more important for the Nets to control the tempo in the beginning on the road. Take the crowd out of it. Take Miami out of it at home. Because when the Nets are at home, they could always get back into it because they're the home team. But when you're on the road, that's what you have to do. You have to take the crowd out of the game and get off the quick starts. That's what the Nets did, and they really never looked back in this game. I don't think they'll ever shoot as well as they did in this game because they basically shot the lights out. K was making everything from downtown, inside the arc, all these long jumpers. Jefferson was just on fire. I know he got hurt. Hopefully he's okay. He just had a fantastic game, and he didn't even take a lot of shots. Carter, awesome. Kristich, he shot the ball really well. And Jason Collins was just fantastic on defense. He did a great job guarding Shaquille O'Neal. The Nets got a lot of key rebounds, great hustle. And also Lamont Murray off the game, hitting a ton of big shots. So it's definitely important that they keep the momentum. They really want to get Shaq into foul trouble, and they have to control this game, especially on the road.
Jason Kidd dominated, the game, 22 points. He has 9.7 assists in the playoffs, just under Stephen Nash. Can Jason Kidd push this Nets team to victory?
I think he can do it. I mean, he's brought him to the finals a few times before. Basically, it all comes down to the kid. He's the man who has to feed the ball, get the open man, and get him the shot. And by doing that, by scoring himself 22 points, right? He had 22 points. By doing that himself, he takes pressure off Vince Carter. He allows Vince Carter to look around a little more, control the tempo, and he can get better shots. You increase Vince Carter's, confidence, and that results in a win.
As good as Steve Nash is, he's won the MVP award the last 2 years. In the clutch, when it counts, in crunch time, I would still take Jason Kidd over Steve Nash. Jason Kidd, he knows how to play. He's a gamer. He could hit the clutch shot. He really knows how to set his teammates up. I'm sure you asked Richard Jefferson and Vince Carter about their game. They would say they would never be as good without Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd did a beautiful job on the fast break last night, and instead of taking it in, he found Vince Carter open from long range, and he kicked it out to Carter, and Carter made the shot. He just really knows how to set up his teammates, even on the fast break too. So everywhere, he just totally knows how to set up his teammates. He's really calm in the clutch. He doesn't get rattled. He's just a total gamer. He was just fantastic last night.
All right, guys, real quick. The Nets are playing Miami Wednesday. How important is this Game 1 win to the overall series, and how successful will the Nets be for the rest of the matchups?
I think it's huge because Miami's really hard. They have a great crowd that always stays in the game. By winning one at Miami, they're keeping the momentum in their favor. Even if they lose one, the series is tied going home, which is going to be humongous for them. Kidd has to play great, and also Carter has to keep up his points. If he shoots above 25 points, they get a win. It's almost guaranteed. And basically that's what it's going to come down to. I say Nets in 7. I think the Heat are going to make a
Dave,
little
I'm
comeback.
sorry I'm going to have to cut you off, guys.
Ooh.
It's great talk. We'll come back with more drill concerning the Devils hockey and Mets baseball. Welcome back to the drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today, we have a very special guest, Mayor Scott Rumana and Dave Suntup. So we're going to start off just by asking you a few questions. Who are your favorite sports teams?
Who are my favorite sports teams? Well, starting with football, obviously a Giant fan. I mean, being from New Jersey, I don't think you should live in New Jersey if you're not a Giant fan. Not impartial to the Jets. I mean, I've always liked them too. And we were talking a little earlier about the fact that when I was 5 years old, the Jets actually won the Super Bowl for the first time in 1969. And but still a Giant fan. As far as baseball, again, I guess this goes back to my childhood because the Mets won the 1969 World Series, and that's a memory that I have from those years. So I guess I tend to be a Mets fan, although I'm always proud about the Yankees when they win, and they've been a very successful program through the years. As far as hockey, when I was younger, they didn't have the New Jersey Devils here. We only had the New York Rangers, so I was always a Ranger fan as far as hockey is concerned. Since the Devils are certainly in the playoffs at this point, I cheer them on with all my heart because I obviously want to see our local team win, and I do obviously go to a lot of Devils games when I get out to a hockey event. Basketball, again, I was a Knicks fan from a little kid, so I guess I've always remained a Knicks fan all through the years. Obviously, they're not doing so well these days, so we're proud about the Nets and want to see them succeed in the playoffs. But that's about my professional sports involvement.
Yeah, definitely some good choices there. I'm also a big Giants fan, huge Mets fan, Rangers. I'm really glad they're playing well now, and then I also like the New Jersey Nets. But what do you think about a couple of franchises here that you picked, the Giants, the Mets, the Rangers? How happy are you that they have finally turned the corner and are starting to play really well?
Well, that certainly makes me smile to pick up the paper and see that they're not losing every game like we've had some rough seasons around here. That's encouraging, as a fan, and I think it's good, for the whole sports market in this area, the tri-state area. My interest in athletics is very strong. I like to support all the programs, certainly the high school level and the youth programs in town. It's something that I feel very strongly about. I guess you could say I'm a general sports enthusiast.
Yeah, I also want to ask you another question. What do you think about some of these local teams, like the Devils, the Mets, the Yankees, the Giants, the Jets? They're getting new stadiums in the future. How do you think that's going to affect the sports market in New Jersey, New York?
Well, That's an interesting question to ask, because I myself am not a big fan about this move to Newark, for example.
I'm not either.
With the stadium for the Devils. If you're from our area of the state, to try to drive to Newark is a real hassle. As
I
opposed to
agree.
going down Route 3 and
They should have made a new arena right there.
I agree, and so we see very much eye to eye on that point. I think Newark, the former mayor of Newark now, Sharp James, and anybody who's down, in that area, I applaud them for what they're trying to do for their community. They've certainly done a lot with the New Jersey PAC Center and some other projects that they built down there. But as far as a fan having to drive somewhere to go see a game, I'd certainly rather go to the Continental Arena area. I think it's going to be a help no matter how you slice it. I think that if they build new stadiums, it's going to hopefully keep on attracting fans to the programs, and that's good because they're going to survive. They're going to keep on attracting people to come to the games. The hard part is, what are they going to put the tickets at as far as the price?
A lot of these tickets are very overpriced.
The average person nowadays, I mean, you bring a family of 4 to a game.
Over $100.
Oh, yeah, you're over $100. You're talking $500, $600.
Especially the Devils. Devils tickets are extremely overpriced.
Yeah, it's just too much, and somehow, some way, I hope that the owners of the programs and that they start trying to make this more affordable for the average fan, because that's your big base. I mean, they have to make money to pay the salaries, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you keep your
fan base.
Your fan base there. So,
all right, we'll go to the next question. This year, the high school football team was a huge hit in Wayne Hills. We went 12-0, won North 1 Group 3 state title. Wayne Valley won the Northern Hills Conference, and they only lasted 2 games to the whole. They only lost 2 games the whole year. How are your thoughts on both teams?
Oh, I'm really proud. I really am. One thing I've joked around with Coach Olson, for example, here at Wayne Hills, that you want to keep me as your mayor, because up until I became mayor, we hadn't won a state championship yet. We kept on just getting there and not making it. And so far, we've won 3 state championships since I've been in office. And I know it has nothing to do with me being mayor. It's all about the program. Every player on that team, or on the various teams that have won the state championships, and the coaching staff. I mean, everybody has worked so hard to achieve the goals that they've reached. Nothing makes me prouder. I have to tell you that to be able to boast that we're the home of the state championship team, and in the case of Wayne Valley, a program that is growing and improving day by day, is it's something that they're real bragging rights, from my perspective, and I think it's nothing but positive for the town. So I think that younger people getting involved in athletics is something that's important, and even if you don't play competitively, just to get out there and for recreation purposes, to try to stay in shape, and it helps you keep focused on your schoolwork, or just give you positive direction in life, and that's why I am such a strong supporter for this.
Well, over Thanksgiving weekend, every year, on Thanksgiving Day, some towns they have like a rivalry football game, like Ramapo plays Indian Hills, Demorest plays Old Tappan. Do you think in the future maybe there will be a Wayne Valley, Wayne Hills football game on Thanksgiving Day, possibly?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I know that through the years there were Thanksgiving Day games in town. For instance, when I was a younger guy, 5, 6, 7 years old, I remember Wayne Valley playing Passaic Valley. On
Battle of the Valleys.
Yeah, those are some years. Cold games.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, there are some days when it can be quite chilly out there on Thanksgiving. But I think that'd be an interesting idea. I thought it was a lot of fun when both schools played each other about 4 years ago.
2001, right?
Correct.
State
5
playoffs.
years ago in the playoffs. That was something that I like, the fact that we can get everybody in the community together. and there's always, I guess, a little apprehension about
Yeah.
that maybe the competition level gets too high. If people just approach the sport
And
like it's supposed to
respectfully.
be, yeah, respectfully, I think that it can work out very well. I see no problem with that. And I think the coaching staff has to make sure that they instruct their
Fans.
players that we're all here as a community. You want to try and win as best as you can, but do it as a sportsman.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not out here to try to hurt the other player. You're out here trying to just win the game. And if you have the right attitude about it, I think it can work out quite well.
Yeah, I don't think it could be much worse than Hills Rampo, because Hills and Rampo, they have a huge rivalry. Football, every sport, the fans could really get a little bit hyper, I guess you could say, and they could behave sometimes not in the best ways.
Yeah, well, we can control the fans. I don't think that that's the problem. It's what's happening on the field that always, gets a parent nervous, and I appreciate that. But athletics is about competition, and it's about trying to do your best, personal best, and as a team. I've played in sports, the better part of my life. I played high school football, I played high school lacrosse, I played college lacrosse, and it's just something that I guess I've grown up with, so that, and now I started playing ice hockey 2 years ago, kind of a silly thing to do at almost the age of 40, but it's,
you gotta do what you love.
You got to do what you love, and that's a great statement, Dave. I really appreciate that.
That wraps up the drill. I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the show, Mayor Scott Rumana. Dave, it's always a pleasure. We'll be back with more drill right after this.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season. And I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East, and the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record, but
In America, he is a citizen here, so it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
How can I get it?
Could say because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this. Good evening and welcome to show 28 of the 30-minute drill. This week we're going to be discussing National Basketball Association playoffs, the NHL, Barry Bonds, just so much to talk about this week. I'm your host, Shane Falco, alongside me, Bobby Boucher. So as of May 17th, 2006, Barry Bonds is not with Babe Ruth in the home run list. He has 713 home runs, a mark that he's been stuck for the past couple weeks now, since May 17th. How is he going to pass him? Because it seems that fate set in, and everything that he's going to hit is either been robbed or he hasn't been hitting it out of the park.
Well, surely Barry Bonds, the pressure is building on him, and maybe it's the media getting to him. Maybe it's just himself getting to himself, if that even makes any sense, because now his expectations are so much higher. But I think that Bonds will break it. You give him the rest of the season. He has so many games to play in the Major League season. It's just such a long run. And all he's got to get is 2 more home runs to be past Babe Ruth for the second most all-time home runs. And you look at what this guy has done throughout his career. He's always overcome all the obstacles that were given to him. And I think that this guy is going to break Babe Ruth's record, and we'll see from there.
And we will see from there, but quite frankly, before all this steroid stuff came into the conversation when Barry Bonds' name was mentioned, let's go back maybe 1999 for say, from his career which started in 1987, that's gone through 1999, would you have said if this guy continued those numbers that he was putting up before 2000 when his numbers started, say, getting larger, like his home run totals kept on escalating, would you have said this guy was a Hall of Famer?
He would be one of those borderline players. Now, it's no clear cut whether he was going to be in the Hall of Fame or not. And along with his numbers that went up, it was really the size of his body. You look at his pictures with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you got to really see how small he was. And now look at the guys built like a brick. So you got to look, and right now, obviously, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. You don't know what all the steroid acquisitions are going to do to his chances to get into the Hall of Fame, but this guy's just a tremendous all-around player.
He is a tremendous all-around player, but his personality is just not there. He's a man, when the press talks to him, I mean, I know this guy gets a lot of garbage from not only the press, the media, and his fellow teammates and his opponents, but when the press talks to him, you see that every time he really gets angry and he gets frustrated and he yells at the press. I mean, he's gone off on the media saying how they destroyed his family life and stuff last year when he had his knee injury. So this man is not a friendly guy. He's very unhappy, even though his accomplishments are just so high. So back to the steroid topic, do you think steroids, the after effect is coming on Bonds? The reason why he's not hitting as many home runs is because they've really taken a toll on his body?
Oh, no, perfect example is Jason Giambi. Now, it seemed like when he was on the steroids, he's going to hit the ball. Now that he's off, for what we think that he's off, he's just simply killing the ball. So I think that Bonds is more of a mental block right now. And quite frankly, if I was Bonds, I would be mad at the media. What player takes more stuff from the media than Barry Bonds? Every day I pick up a newspaper, he's on the cover. It's between like him and Allen Iverson for the two professional athletes that pretty much hear from the media the most.
Yeah, I would say so, but I wanted to bring up your point about Jason Giambi. A couple of years back when the whole Balco situation happened, Victor Conte, all those people out there, but when his situation happened and he actually got sick in the 2003 season, I believe, when he had that stomach problem. He had the benign tumor. So after all that happened, he seemed to get healthy, get himself back into physical shape, and prove that he can actually hit without the roids. Has he proved to you that he's actually a good player without the juice?
Oh, yeah. You look at his numbers, what he was with the Oakland Athletics, and when the Yankees signed him, you were looking at a guy that could hit 50 home runs every year, and with that 314 porch in right field, you may even expect higher numbers for him. So I think that now we're seeing that Jason Giambi is becoming a better hitter, and what's really surprised me is his fielding has improved since he's gotten healthy again. He used to be known for having a bad glove, and that would always overshadow him, but now he's becoming a decent fielder for the Yankees.
Now, quickly, before we sign off here, give me a date when Barry Bonds is going to pass Babe Ruth.
I'll give it around 2 weeks from today, which you said the date is the 17th. I think that maybe they're going to get a few days off. Maybe they're just going to walk him a few games, but 2 weeks at max.
Memorial Day, that's a good choice. Quickly, we would like to congratulate our colleague Alex Penn. Honorable mention All-County Track. We'll be right back in a moment discussing multiple topics. Don't go away. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week. Right now, we're going to be talking about the NBA playoffs. I'm your host, Randall Cunningham, alongside me, Mr. Red. So now, LeBron James saving the Cleveland Cavaliers. As of today, May 18th, he brought his team back from a 2-0 deficit. They're leading the series 3-2. How did you see King James faring in Game 5?
Well, really, you look at a big superstar, and he made the big plays when he needed to. And you look at the Pistons, and now they're down 3-2 going into Cleveland. And the Cavs right now have all the momentum in the world. They've just reeled off 3 in a row. And it seems like the Cavaliers are winning even without their big guys. I don't even know the guy's name with the big puffy hair and Glauskas.
Vallejo. Yeah.
They both fouled out in this game. But it's not bad to have a guy like Drew Gooden as your third center coming into the game. And I don't know what's going on, but it seems like Rasheed Wallace just playing limited minutes throughout the whole postseason. So I think that Detroit still has a legit chance to win the series.
Yeah, they do, but right now, obviously, momentum is on Cleveland's side. And we just saw even in this game, in the series, Rasheed Wallace, the reason he's not been getting his minutes is because he's been in foul trouble. And the Pistons, they just cannot seem to, in their last 3 losses, they cannot reel off any chemistry, and they've just been not in a good form. Now, other games we would like to discussed in playoff matchups, the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers right now. Phoenix Suns leading the series 3-2 after coming off a double overtime win against Los Angeles in Phoenix. How are you seeing this series so far? And does Los Angeles have a shot to win it?
When you look at Los Angeles and throughout the whole season, they've been the biggest surprise in basketball. Now, coming into this season, the big LA team obviously was the Lakers. They have the star in Kobe Bryant. Now, you look at the Clippers, they have guys that if you had to name a certain amount of players on that team, you can't name over 5 players. And you look at the Suns, they got the NBA MVP, Steve Nash, Sean Marion, he's a tremendous player. And they're pretty much playing great ball right now, even without Amari Stoudemire. So I think that the Clippers still do have a legit chance, but you still got to like the Suns at this point.
Yeah, Sam Cassell, he's going to have to lead the way for them. And also Elton Brand, he has really stepped up for the Clippers. And I thought he should have had more consideration for NBA MVP, even though that went back to Steve Nash. Now, this Phoenix Suns, without Amari Stoudemire, we saw that this team, imagine if they had a healthy Amari Stoudemire, they'd basically be unstoppable. If they win this series, they play the winner of the Dallas Mavericks and San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. Dallas right now, great series between those two teams. Who do you see coming out on top in this one?
Well, you look at what Dallas has done so far and how much of an improvement they've had since Avery Johnson has become their head coach, and it's really just tremendous. Now, they've had the talent in the past, and it seems like when they had more talented teams, they didn't go anywhere. When they had guys like Steve Nash and Michael Finley and all those guys, now whenever you watch the game, it seems like every shot Dirk Nowitzki takes, it goes down. And I don't know, it seems like the Spurs are slipping a little bit. It shows how good of a team they really are if they're not playing their grade A ball and they're still in a series like this.
Yeah, it's the truth, because it just seems that Avery Johnson has really found the way for the Dallas Mavericks to play defense. And when they do, they have enough offense to carry their team. Now, other questions I'm just going to throw at you. Who's going to win the Western Conference?
Well, right now I got to like the Dallas Mavericks. I think that if they can get by the San Antonio Spurs, they have the most firepower in the West. And quite frankly, they might have the most momentum, most star power. They have a big name player in Dirk Nowitzki, so I think they could take it all the way.
Who's going to win the Eastern Conference?
You know, right now I'm going to say the Miami Heat. You don't know what's going to happen in that Detroit-Cleveland series, so it's not a safe pick taking either of those teams. Miami really just had a great series against the New Jersey Nets. They had a little struggle with the Chicago Bulls, but they were able to pull that one out. And I think that if Shaquille O'Neal's on the court, he's the most dominating player in basketball still.
You know what? I don't even care anymore about who's going to win. Well, I just hope for good games. And if I had to predict, I'm going with LeBron in the East, and in the West, Steve Nash, the Canadian, and other things. I made an error last week. I just want to wrap this week up. But Alex Penn did not win All-County Track Honorable Mention. It was All-League for the NBIL. So we, congratulate him on his great effort and his running ability. And we're going to be right back, handing the show over to David Suntup, who's going to be talking over great things. Don't go away.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew the Axelband and David Suntup. Today we're going to talk about the New York Mets. Okay, the Mets had a tough week last week, losing the series in Philadelphia and Milwaukee. What went wrong for the Mets?
Well, Ryan, I thought that this would be an easy win for the Mets, but it turned out that it was not an easy win. It was they struggled a lot. Philadelphia, they have a lot of their defense, their fielding is very good, and also the Brewers, they have a lot of power. But the Mets, they struggle with their bullpen.
Andrew, why do you think it would be an easy week for the Mets if the Mets are playing a Philadelphia team that won 8 games in a row?
I thought it would be an easy win.
Yeah, but why would Philadelphia be an easy win if they won 8 games in a row?
They've been playing very well. Just calm down, all right? They've been playing very well.
Okay, I will calm down, Andrew. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Well, they're playing a really hot Philadelphia team. The first game they lost, it was a tough loss. They blew it in the ninth inning. Heilman didn't pitch well, so their bullpen really hasn't been doing well. Heilman and Sanchez have struggled late. And then they lost a tough game on Thursday. Rowan made a great catch. It was a rain-shortened game, 4.5 innings. So the Mets got a little unlucky.
5 minutes.
Lima really didn't pitch very well. So they haven't really been getting the good pitching. Pedro, he's pitched very well, but he's had a bad inning in each of his 2 starts last week, which really hurt him. He gave up a home run. He walked a couple. He hasn't had the same control. And they haven't been getting the key hits of runners in scoring position that they should be getting.
Kaz Matsui is playing surprisingly well. What do you think about his play? And once Anderson Hernandez comes back, do you think that Kaz should sit the bench?
No, Kaz Matsui, he will be playing I believe for the rest of the season if he doesn't get hurt. He struggled last year, but he's been playing very well this year. And Hernandez is an okay player, but Kaz Matsui has showed that he can play very well, and they will start him.
Kazmatsui has really improved a lot offensively. He's not swinging at bad pitches. He's swinging at good pitches and driving them to all fields. He's really hitting well. He's hitting go runners in scoring position. And also, in the field, a big difference. He's not making those errors on ground balls that he did last year. He looks a lot more relaxed. And then on the double play, he's a lot more crisp in turning a double play. And also, he's not bailing out if someone's sliding and about to take him out. He's not afraid of that. I think Anderson Hernandez is much better defensively, but when you're hitting about 150 and you have someone who's still playing good defense but hitting about like 280, 290, where Kaz is probably about right now, I think you have to stick with Kaz Matsui. And Anderson Hernandez, he still needs to stay on the Myers because he needs to learn plate discipline. He needs to hit better.
We got some good news. Brian Bannister is coming back off the disabled list. He's going to pitch this week. How is this going to help the Mets?
This is going to help the Mets a lot. He's been out for a while. He pitched very well when he wasn't hurt, and he also hit the ball very well. This is going to help the Mets, and he should be off to a good start.
It's definitely going to help the Mets out. First of all, Brian Bannister pitched fantastic when he was healthy. He didn't go a lot of innings, but when he did go, he usually pitched about 5 innings. He got about 1 or 2 runs. He kept the Mets in every game, and he always gave the Mets a chance to win. And that's important for a team like the Mets because they've been struggling with starting pitching. I think Jose Lima has to be the person to go because Lima time has not really worked out in a Mets uniform so far.
When Bannister comes back, who should the odd man out in the rotation between Jeremy and Gonzalez and Jose Lima be?
I think it should be Gonzalez because he's much better than Jose Lima. What do you think, Dave?
Wait, who do you think it would be? Who do you think should leave? Lima should leave the rotation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think Lima should leave.
Well, Gonzalez pitched very well when he pitched for the Mets Saturday in Milwaukee. He really pounded the strike zone. That's what I like. He threw a lot of strikes. He pitched inside. He pitched outside. The thing I didn't like about Gonzalez is he doesn't change speeds well. He doesn't have a lot of movement on his pitches. So if he's right around the middle of the plate, he could get killed because the other team's going to hit a lot of his pitches. But Lima definitely should be the odd man out. He's had a bad inning in each of his starts. While he did better on Friday in Milwaukee, he still hasn't really pitched that well, and he hasn't given the Mets a chance to win games.
Thanks, guys. Stick around as we talk about the Nets next on The Drill. Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Matt Riding Dirty Dubow and David Suntup. Now we're going to recap the Heats versus the Nets series. The Nets lost the Heat in 5 games in the second round of the playoffs. Many people thought the Nets would put up a much better fight. Why did the Nets lose the series?
Besides game 1, the Heat controlled the tempo of this whole series. It was always Nets playing a defensive game. That's not what they like. They like to have fast break points and, put themselves to the advantage, make the other team play catch up, and they didn't do that here. They managed to control Shaq, which was good. They kept him on the foul line shooting, but unfortunately they couldn't control Wade, and that was a big difference here. He ran on him all day. He was really a playmaker. He gave other people the ball. We really haven't seen that much out of him. Normally he's the big scorer, but he used his team very wisely.
Well, the Nets played very well in Game 1. In Game 2, they were really never in Game 2. They didn't really care about Game 2 because they just wanted to go home 1-1. And in Game 3 and Game 4, very poor execution in the fourth quarter. They didn't get good shots. They turned over the ball. They didn't play good defense. And then also, while they played they played very good defense on Shaquille O'Neal, but Dwayne Wade just dominated the fourth quarters of the last 3 games, and he played extremely well. He drove to the hole, no problem. And that supporting cast of Haslam and Walker really started to pick it up for the Heat. The Nets definitely could have played much better in this series. I'm a little disappointed in that.
In Game 5, the Nets put up a great fight. They lost 106-105. What went wrong in the game?
Really the only reason they were so close was because of their offense. Their defense played terrible. Every single time Miami went down, they basically scored. They managed to keep Shaq in foul trouble again, but Kristick got into foul trouble, which hurt them because no longer could they, control Shaq without Kristick. Kid played very well, but what it came down to is that last play, and you have to be able to make those big plays if you want to beat a team like Miami, and it just didn't happen.
Well, what happened in Game 5 was the Nets, they really shot the ball very well. In order to beat a team like Miami, you have to shoot the ball well. Like Game 1, the Nets shot the ball well, they won. In this game, they shot the ball very well, but they almost won. But the reason why they didn't win is they didn't get any scoring from their big men. Kristich and Collins had a combined 2 points, and you can't win like that in the playoffs. Their bench, besides Lamar Murray, who played fantastic, and he's played fantastic in the playoffs, did absolutely nothing. Their defense was not very good. They don't rebound the ball very well. Kristich and Collins are terrible rebounders. And then they're giving the second chance opportunities on offense. And when you get second chance opportunities with Shaquille O'Neal and Udonis Haslem, they're going to put those balls back up and in, and you can't allow that in the playoffs.
Kristich only scored 1 point in the game. He didn't play good at all in the series. What went wrong with him?
I mean, Kristich did his job, which was containing Shaq.
That was more Collins, though. More Collins.
That's true, but if you saw a lot last night, especially with Collins was a little hurt, and they didn't have him in a lot, they put Kristich on him, and what happened was last night especially, he would get into foul trouble because of containing Shaq. His job was to hack at Shaq, make Shaq go to the line and miss two, and he did that for the most part. But by putting the fouls on him, you hurt his offensive game, and he couldn't get those points like they really needed him to, and that's what happened to him in the last game.
Nenad Kristich, Indiana Pacers series, play like the Nenad Kristich of this year. The one in the Miami Heat series, play like the Nenad Kristich of last year. Because Kristich last year, we knew he had potential, but he'd get 2,000 like the first couple minutes of the first quarter, and he'd be on the bench for most of the first half. And then the second half, he'd struggle offensively. First of all, he didn't play well in this series at all, except for maybe the first game where he played decently. So he's been in a shooting slump. And second of all, it doesn't help when you only get 3 shots in the game. I mean, you have to be in some type of rhythm in order to play well, and he just was not in that rhythm because Carter and Jefferson are taking a majority of the shots. So there's basically nothing for Kristich. Also, I don't know, maybe I don't really see him being afraid. Collins is more afraid to go after the big guys. Oh, maybe he was intimidated by Shaq or something like that. But they should have gone to him more because if he had more shot opportunities, maybe Shaq could have gotten more fouls. I mean, the Nets had everything go their way last night in the first half. They had Wade and Shaq not score in the second quarter. Shaq was in foul trouble. I mean, this was the Nets' game to take over early in the first half, and they didn't do it because Antoine Walker really shot the ball well from deep. Peyton came off the bench, Morey came off the bench, and the Heat bench played really well. So the Nets blew a big opportunity in this game.
Thanks, guys. Stick around as we talk about the Subway Series between the Mets and the Yankees. Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew the Axelband and Dave Suntup. Now we're going to preview the Subway Series between the Mets and the Yankees. First game takes place at Shea Stadium on Friday night when Jeremy Gonzalez pitches for the Mets and Randy Johnson goes for the Bombers. The Mets have dominated Randy Johnson in the past, and he has struggled as of late. Will Randy Johnson be able to pitch well on Friday?
Yes, he will. He's been practicing all week. He hasn't been playing that well, but the Mets, they are still a good team. They have a lot of great hitters. Beltran, he could be a cause of Randy Johnson failing in this game, but I believe that Johnson will pitch well and the Yankees will win.
I'm not expecting such a positive answer from Dave here, coming from a Mets fan, but let's see what he has to say.
Let's go, Dave.
Well, Andrew, you're making a bold prediction there, but first of all, Randy Johnson, he makes $16 million a year. I don't think he's earned a penny of that $16 million this year because he has been just awful the last month.
Dave, don't you think that's a little harsh?
Yeah.
Look at the way he's been pitching. You know, he's
they-
on the back pages of
Dave,
New York papers for a
when
long
Johnson
time.
wipes out the whole Mets Friday, you'll see what you'll see.
Okay, I won't see. Okay, but anyway, back to what I was saying. Randy Johnson, he's lost his confidence. He hasn't been pitching inside. His slider's been flat, so he's been getting hit hard. I don't know if the Mets will blow him out, but I think the Mets will win because the Mets have beaten him before in the past. They beat him in Arizona. They've beaten him on the Yankees, and they beat him last year at Shea. They hit him really hard.
Yeah, it's this year, not last year, Dave.
Well, they've hit him hard in the past, Andrew. They hit him hard in the playoffs when he was in Arizona, so they've definitely hit him hard in the past. And then Jeremy Gonzalez making his second start. He pitched pretty well the first start. He pounded hitters inside. He doesn't have a lot of movement on his pitches, so if he keeps his balls over the plate, he could be in trouble because the Yankees have a pretty good offense.
In the second game, Pedro Martinez pitches against Mike Messina. What are your thoughts on the game and who will win the great pitching matchup?
Now, I'm going to go against my team because Pedro Martinez has been playing very well. Mike Messina, he's a little off, but Pedro Martinez, he has been pitching so well that the Mets are definitely going to win this game.
Well, Mike Messina, he pitched well the other day. I believe he pitched against the Rangers. He gave up 2 runs in probably about 6 or 7 innings. Pedro Martinez has also pitched pretty well, but the problem with Pedro is he has one bad inning because he gives up about a home run a start, and he walks a couple batters. He can't walk batters. He has to keep people off base, and he has to stop giving up the long ball because the long ball could hurt him. Because he's pitched so well, but his last 2 starts he's had one bad inning. it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it could come down to the bullpens, where it'll be basically the Mets setup men against the Yankees setup men, where the Mets have the advantage because Sanchez and Hama have been pitching so well. And you could see the battle of the Sandmen, Mariano Rivera and Billy Wagner in the ninth inning.
Tom Glavine goes for the Mets in the third game. He's been on a hot pitching streak. Do you think he's going to keep it up?
He has been hot, Ryan. It's tough to say because they're playing against the Yankees. They're a really, really good team, and they have a lot of power, and they're pitching also good. But Tom Glavine, he's been pitching very well. Last year he didn't pitch that well. This year, he changed a lot. He takes it like one step at a time. But, yeah, he can pitch good for this game.
I think he definitely will pitch well. He's been pitching really well of late. His last start against the Cardinals, our Pujols, he was on fire before then. No hits against Glavine. Glavine's been fantastic. He's going up against Chacon, who's been a little inconsistent this year. In his last start, he really got hurt by an error by Damon. That was the great Yankee game where the Yankees came back to win 14-13. They were down 9-0. So Chacon will definitely be well rested because he didn't pitch a lot. But it's going to be an interesting game. Glavine's been pitching really well, and he's really been on this game. I think for the most part, the pitching matchups favor the Mets in this series.
Both teams have a lot of quality players in their lineups. The Yankees got Giambi, they got Damon, they got A-Rod, they got Jeter. The Mets got Reyes, Beltran, Wright, Delgado. What impact will these hitters have on the series?
Well, you're looking at the Yankees, Damon, Jeter, A-Rod, Giambi, 4 great players, Beltran, Wright, Delgado, another great players for the Mets. But
how about Reyes?
Yeah, Reyes. It doesn't matter name, but the Yankees, much better players than the Mets.
Well, I'd have to give the offensive edge to the Yankees. The Yankees have a better offense. They get big hits. They hit a lot more home runs. But without Sheffield and Matsui, maybe it's a little more even than people think. Because the Mets offense, they have a lot of good players on offense, but they haven't been getting the timely hits that they needed to get. And Floyd has really struggled mightily this year. He's only hitting around 200. So that's been hurting the team. But Delgado, he's been hitting well. Beltran's been hitting the ball well. Wright starting to hit better. And Reyes really needs to get on base. And Duca, he's been clutch for the Mets. He's gotten a couple of key hits in the ninth inning. And also look out for Xavier Nady, who's hit well this year. And Kaz Matsui, who everyone thought he was done. He's having a great third season.
And like Matsui, he got hurt, his wrist. That's going to be a big impact on this game.
Well, Matsui's not going to be back until probably
I know, I said 3 months.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for watching Show 28. Tune in next week as we talk about the Mets, Yankees, and the NBA.
And this is the first game in the tournament where Sheldon Williams is going to have a challenge inside with Glenn Davis.
Probably one of the hardest conferences this whole season. And I think probably Villanova will probably make it in that from the Big East.
Cincinnati had a good Big East record. They were 9-7 in the Big East. And the Big East is a really tough conference. They had a good overall record. But
in America, he is a citizen here, so, it was his own personal choice. I think he made a good one.
How can I get you? Say because the expectations were just so high for this young man, and he did not live up to them.
In this tournament, and do you think they can do well in the tournament?
More drill after this.
And welcome back to the 30-minute drill. As you all know, it's been really a tremendous year in sports, and as you know, this is the last show of the 30-minute drill, really recapping the 2005-2006 season in sports. It's really been great. I'm your host, Steve from Blues Clues, Lala from the Teletubbies. Right now we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference in the National Basketball Association, and as we all know in the regular season, the Detroit Pistons were absolutely unreal. At home, I think they had only 4 losses the whole season. It's just really a great team chemistry that this team had. What makes this team so tough to beat at home?
Well, Steve, I just want to bring this up. During the regular season, they really had a remarkable year, only losing, I believe, 18 games, going 64-18. But what they did in the playoffs, really, it's not there because all that chemistry that they had, even the year that they won the championship to this regular season. In the playoffs, they emphasized defense, they said. They gave a 56% shooting to the Miami Heat in the last 3 games. So where was the team there? So in the playoffs, I don't think they showed up this year.
Now, the 2 seed throughout the regular season was the Miami Heat, and Shaquille O'Neal really was plagued by injuries the whole season. Dwayne Wade really had to pick up the slack. And really guys like Antoine Walker turned into key players for this team. Now, in the playoffs, it seemed like they were really just unbeatable. They had a little scare with the Bulls in the first round, but they got by. What are you thinking about this team in the future? You got Shaq in up there in the years this year, then the finals, but you think this team could become a franchise?
Well, I definitely they can become a franchise, but let's look at the present right now. I think they have the firepower to win the NBA championship this year because not only did Shaquille O'Neal step it up in the playoffs after their injury-plagued season, Dwayne Wade obviously being Dwayne Wade in the fourth quarter, especially during the playoffs. Let's look at the role players. Udonis Haslem really stepping it up. This guy out of Florida, went to France for a year to work on tone his skills a little bit, and then he comes to the Heat. They gave him a tryout, and look where he's been now. He's made one of the best 6 men in the league, actually starting now for them. Antoine Walker really coming up, clutching some of the games, making some big shots, even though he looks so awkward out there, just moving around. But he's really stepped it up for the Heat. But yeah, I think if the Heat can win this year, and then for the coming years, they can still be a very dominating franchise.
Now let's take a look down the highway, go to East Rutherford, New Jersey, and the Nets. Now this season, they really had a great 3-headed monster. And you look in the past at teams that won. Take example the San Antonio Spurs. They had a 3-headed monster. Now you look at the Nets, their problem really was their lack of interior game. Now, in the future, do you think that they can get by with Nate Kristich and just have their guards run the show for them, or they're going to have to add a steady, not a spectacular inside guy?
Well, you look at the Eastern Conference, and besides Detroit and the Heat, there's not really a team in there. Oh, I guess you can make an argument for Jonas Ilgauskas out of the Cavaliers, but there's not really a legitimate big man in the East that you can say, wow, the Nets are really going to be struggling to make the playoffs. Because if you're in the East and you have decent firepower and scoring, you're going to make the playoffs every year because the Eastern Conference, it's not what it was in the 1990s with the Bulls, the Knicks, the Celtics, even in the 80s with the 76ers as well. So, yeah, I think the Nets, they can survive without a big man to get into the playoffs, but once they get into the playoffs, like especially deep, as we saw this year against the Heat, they're not going to be able to handle these teams with dominant big men.
Now, clearly, the 2 best players in the Eastern Conference were Gilbert Arenas and LeBron James. Both teams were the 4 and 5 seeds in the playoffs. Now, these teams really had a great series in that first round. They both had very good regular seasons. What do you think about these teams in the future to come?
Well, I think Gilbert Arenas is one of the most, coming into this year, one of the most underrated players in the league because not really a lot of people talk about him. He carried this Wizards team. We saw it from day 1 to day 82. He would put up consistently a great amount of points, and he's got a nice partner, Antoine Jamison, but I think on the whole, Gilbert Arenas, he can carry this team for years to come, and if they get a legitimate big man, maybe via free agency or something, they're going to be pretty good. And LeBron James, he's the future of this league because what you saw in the playoffs, his display, and he's the total package. I think he could be, in the long run, he could be better than Jordan if he can win his rings.
Yeah, really, he's just a tremendous player. And I like the Chicago Bulls in the future. They're a tremendous team, but we only have time for me to ask you about your favorite team, the New York Knickerbockers. And, well, there's really not much to say about this team. They lose their number 2 pick to the Chicago Bulls. It was a long season. Every player on the team is overpaid. Larry Brown did nothing with this team. Comments?
Well, before you know it, they're going to be drafting me on draft day because apparently they don't know how to draft or sign free agents. This team really, even though I watch all 82 games via high definition, but you know what, I can't stand it anymore. If they can't, my plan in this offseason, get rid of everyone except Channing Frye. That's what I would do.
Thank you, Ric Flair. It was an honor. We'll be back after the break.
Welcome back to the season finale edition of 30 Minute Drill, where we're going to wrap up the year of 2006 in sports. I'm your host, Matt Dubow, once again in the hosting chair where I started myself here at 30 Minute Drill, joined today by our guests, Andrew the Axelband and David Suntup. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the Western Conference of the NBA. First question. Who, out of all the All-Stars in the West, do you think was the best player overall this year in the NBA?
I would say Kobe Bryant. He played extremely well. He probably was the only player that scored the most of his points on his team. He had a lot of big games, like a lot of 50-point games. Surprisingly, he played very well, and but his team did not make it that far this season. But we'll see about next year.
I'm going to go with Steve Nash. He is the motor that makes the Suns go. He got everyone involved, Marion, Diaw. The Suns, they lost Amara. He was out for the year with that big knee injury, had microfracture surgery, and they lost Joe Johnson. They lost Quentin Richardson. And the Suns were still better than last year. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, but lost to the Mavericks. And Steve Nash just had a fantastic season. Besides scoring points, he got everyone involved, and he made the Suns a great team, even without those players.
I like Tim Duncan, even though his team didn't get as far as he had hoped. He's the strong man in the West, and no one can really beat him. He's the big guy. He's got to be the best big guy in the league right now. I mean, he's just wonderful, and he holds the San Antonio Spurs up by himself. Next question. What coach do you think did the best job in the West?
I would say Phil Jackson, Los Angeles Lakers. He brought the team. The team last year was not really that good. This year, he worked with them, and they lost a few games, but he made the team very well, very good, and I think he was the coach of the year this year.
It's a tough choice here, but I'm gonna go with Mike Dunleavy of the Los Angeles Clippers. Everyone thought the Clippers would be in the lottery again, the Nets would have a lottery pick. Everyone was wrong, including myself. Mike Dunleavy molded the Clippers together. The Clippers had a fantastic season. They finished with the 6th seed in the West. They won one round of playoffs. They almost knocked off the Suns in a huge upset. I was really impressed with the Clippers this year. Elton Brand, everyone just had a fantastic year.
I agree with you, Suntup. I think the Clippers really surprised everybody, especially in the postseason. Nobody was expecting them to put such a matchup
against
the Suns, who went all the way down to the wire. All right, guys, next question. If you had to rate one of the teams, even though it's hard, in the West as number one, which would it be and why?
Well, it's obvious. It has to be Dallas. They made it this far. They have one of the top players in the NBA right now, Dirk Nowitzki. He's a very strong player, and they also have a guy named Jerry Stackhouse. He's very well too. But I think that they were the best team this year.
Definitely, I have to agree with Mr. Axelband here. Dallas Mavericks are just fantastic this year. Avery Johnson, when he took over last year, he really put a different identity into this Dallas team. They now play defense. They still have great offense, but it's ironic. They lose Nash, they lose Finley, and now look where they are. They're in the NBA Finals. They're playing great basketball. Dirk Nowitzki really had an MVP type year. Totally carried the team on his back after the losses of Finley and Nash. They have a lot of depth on this team. They have Stackhouse. They have Howard. They have Dampier. They have guys that can come off the bench. So they're definitely the best team in the West.
I think if you're talking postseason, Dallas is definitely the best. They definitely proved everybody wrong.
Matt, remember, they were second in the Western Conference. They're the second best record.
But I think if we're talking regular season, I like the Suns. I just like the way they work together. I think they're great. Steve Nash gets everybody in the game. And
San Antonio still had a great year, even though they lost in the second round.
Yeah, Tim Duncan really does carry that team. All right, next question. Going to the opposite end of the spectrum, who was the most disappointing team?
I have to disagree with you. You said that San Antonio was one of the good teams. I did not. I think that was a disappointing team. They should have made it further than they did in the playoffs.
Well, I'm going to go with Houston. You have Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady. They just signed Stromae. So everyone thought they could have contended for the NBA title, and they were terrible. They didn't even make the playoffs.
I can't let this question go, guys. Really quick, who do you think is going to take it next season?
Dallas again.
Phoenix. Amari comes back.
I like Phoenix, too.
I like Dallas.
All right, guys. Good insight, guys. We'll be back after this to talk about the Giants' 2005 season.
And welcome back to 30-Minute Drill. I'm your host, Alan Bernstein, along with my wonderful guests, Andrew Paulie Walnuts Gayo and Matt the Syrian Sausage Taylor. Now we're here. We got to talk about the Giants wrapping up this year. It's our last show. 60 minutes of talking. Let's start off with the Giants. They had a pretty good season, 10-6. They lost miserably to Carolina in the playoffs. Let's recap the season.
Well, quite frankly, it was a successful one because going into the season, everyone said the Giants were going to contend, but not a lot of people thought they were going to win the division, and actually they came out, won the NFC East, really surprising a lot of people. So overall, the season was a success, which cannot be tampered by the 20-0 loss to Carolina, but overall it was a success.
Oh yeah, going into the season, I really wasn't expecting the Giants to be this legit of a contender, and they exceeded all expectations that I had. We found out that Eli Manning really could be a playmaker in the future. Plaxico Burress, he really is a big-time player. And you got to look at the future for the Giants, and you got to see a lot of bright spots for them.
Yeah, we got to talk about Eli Manning. He definitely improved on his sophomore season. He kind of sloped off a little to the end, but he did lead his team to the NFC East title. Let's talk about him quickly.
Well, quite frank, he is going to be the man behind the signals, calling the signals for years to come for the Giants. And you're right, he did improve a lot. He made a lot of more smarter decisions. But then we saw the old Eli Manning, such as in the playoff game, throwing interceptions here and there, not really, taking his time, rushing his throws. But really what saved the Giants when the games that he lost was Tiki Barber running the ball very well for them. So he's the man for them. So Eli Manning, he's only going to improve.
Well, towards the beginning of the year, you thought that Eli Manning really was going to be an all-pro quarterback. And then it seemed like once he kept going away from Plaxico Burress, his numbers kept slipping.
Plaxico definitely fell asleep at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah, it seemed like he wasn't trying. And it was really good that Amani Toomer came back. The year before that, he was just a non-factor in the games. And this year, he was a premier receiver for this team. So I think that for Eli to be effective consistently throughout a 16-game season, you got to throw to both your receivers and even to Jeremy Shockey more often.
Right, another thing, Jeremy Shockey, he didn't have a great season in his third season in the league. He wasn't very effective. Eli Manning was not having trouble. He was having a lot of trouble finding him. Also, a lot of teams are kind of figuring out if you double cover the Giants and Plaxico Burress isn't making the production, you isolate Amani Toomer, who's had his great season, but he's a possession receiver. He's not going to break the game open. And I really think the Giants need to isolate Shockey, get him out of there, and get some 15-yard pass game on third down and really open up the offense.
Well, he's got to be like what Mark Bavaro was for the Giants when they won those 2 Super Bowls back in the late 80s, early 90s. The man that they can go to on a third down play, a deep third down play, so that they can throw to him and give him, that they can depend on him to catch the ball, get him a first down. Because at times we've seen that that side of Shockey, but most of the time he's out there, he's complaining that he got held or something like that. But also a big point for the Giants, they need Tim Carter to step up, and because he's been a big draft pick for them, coming out of Auburn, setting records there, receiving records, and he hasn't done anything. So Tim Carter's going to be a big. They need him to step up.
Well, you take a look at all the teams that have pretty good tight ends: the San Diego Chargers, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Atlanta Falcons. And their tight ends really are the center of attention, and we see how productive those offenses are. Now, I think if Jeremy Shockey is the X factor in these games, it can really open up things, not enable these defenses to double team guys like Plaxico Burress. Because in one-on-one coverage, I don't know if anyone could really cover him. The guy's 6'5", his arms are so long. So I think that if you establish him as the guy that we're going to go to, it could open up other things for the Giants.
On the other side of the ball, we got to talk about the defense. The pass defense was poor this year, I'd say. The run defense was a little bit better than that. You have Michael Strahan anchoring the defense down. Some injuries in the linebacking core definitely set the Giants back, but the pass defense, I think, was pretty mediocre at best. What do you guys think about the pass defense?
Well, the pass defense, at the beginning of the season, actually was a strong point for them because everyone was talking about how the strengths on this team were the pass defense. But as the season wore on, people were getting hurt, injured. But now I think the Giants really did an excellent job during the all-season emphasizing that, getting players such as LeVar Arrington, Sam Madison, they go cover up those holes in the pass defense. So I think they've improved on that vastly.
Well, a good pass defense really goes directly with good defensive ends, and the Giants' defensive ends really were spectacular this season, but the defensive backs still were very awful. And I really think that a strong point for this team is their linebackers. Antonio Pierce really was a stud for them. Adam LeVar Arrington, that's never going to hurt. And their tackles really surprised me. They really filled the middle. So I was very happy with the interior defense for the Giants.
Also, the special teams, Jay Feely turned out to be a very good pickup. He was a little overshadowed by the Seattle game, but otherwise he really had a great season for the Giants. Also, Fiegels had a fantastic season, really putting the Giants' opponents in a good spot in the field. Well, that's all the time we have for this segment. We're looking forward to a great Giants season. We're right back and more NFC after this.
And welcome back to the 30-minute drill, my first hosting experience. My name is Abraham Lincoln. John Booth. Right now we're going to recap the NFC this season and really some surprises this year. Now let's start on the East Coast with the NFC East. Now, we all know the New York Football Giants came out on top. Really a tough division. Many people thought that the Eagles were going to be on top. They'll lose Terrell Owens, McNabb goes down. What do you feel if you have to talk about this division as a whole?
Well, Abe, obviously it's the toughest division in the NFC. I mean, we look at all these 4 teams, they're all capable of being division winners. If they were all spread around the league, we look at Dallas, they improved a lot this year. Julius Jones, he's ready to have a breakout season. The Washington Redskins, Santana Moss has established himself as one of the best wide receivers in the game. And the Giants and Eagles, I mean, these 2 teams really improved in the offseason. The Eagles via the draft and the Giants via free agency. So I see this NFC East as being a strong one, and I can see all these 4 teams at least finishing maybe 10-6, 9-7, all of them.
Yeah, look at the future, and let's take a team from the New York Giants. In the division, every year they're going to have 6 tough games versus their division opponents. Even when these teams are down, even in-division games are always going to be tough. Now take us south a little bit, and there was really 3 contenders in this division. Now we all know that the Panthers really put a beat down on the Giants in the first round. Michael Vick and the Falcons disappointed, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers exceeded all expectations. What do you think about this division?
Well, we have to look at the cellar team, the New Orleans Saints. They really improved, getting Reggie Bush, obviously the best player in the draft this year, and then getting Drew Brees to be their quarterback over Aaron Brooks. So they're going to improve, but they're obviously not going to be in first place. Carolina Panthers, I think the best team in the NFC by far. You look at Deshaun Foster, he's ready to break out now with Steven Davis off his back. Jake Delhomme, he's really a solid quarterback. And Steve Smith, their top wide receiver, he's very good. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they always have a strong defense. Their point really is just to have Chris Sims mature into a good player. And then we look at the other team in this division, the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Vick, he's got to get these critics off his back and just tell them that I can be a good quarterback and just show him, because he hasn't. He's just shown that he can run.
Yeah, who would have thought that a few years ago we saw Chris Sims playing for Ramapo High School, and now he's in the NFL. Now you look at the North, the Chicago Bears. This defense, hands down the best in the NFL throughout the regular season. The offense was a little shaky. Now you look at the other teams in the division, the Packers, they were just a disaster this season. And the Minnesota Vikings, they lose Randy Moss, Dante Culpepper's hurt, and this team is just a disaster. So what do you think about the Bears and in the future, their lack of offense, how it can affect? I mean, this season it worked. Their defense won games. How's it going to work in the future?
Well, the Bears, their defense is obviously the best in the league. I mean, you just look at it, position, Brian Urlacher, the leader on that team. And then you look at the other teams in this division, the Minnesota Vikings really improved in the offseason and getting players that they needed at positions that were at need, because even though they struggled in the early going, Brad Johnson really got his teammates going together, and they finished to go 9-7, which ended up being a strong season for them after being a horrible beginning to it. And then the Green Bay Packers, Brett Favre coming back. I don't know what's up with him. I mean, I know he wants to end off being a winner, but I don't think he has any gas left in the tank. And the Detroit Lions, well, they're the Lions. You never know what you're going to get from them, and I think they're going to finish in last place again.
Now you take it to the final division, the West, and the winner of this division was in the city that doesn't stop raining, the Seattle Seahawks, and Sean Alexander really had another tremendous season. Now the St. Louis Rams, they really didn't meet expectations. A lot of people said the Cardinals were going to be legit contenders. They obviously got better in the offseason. They got Matt Leinart. They also got Edgerrin James. What do you think about this division the past season?
Well, all I know is that last year I picked in the preseason, actually the first week of the drill, we talked about who's going to win this division. I said the Arizona Cardinals, and obviously I was a little off because the Seattle Seahawks actually ended up winning this division and then going to the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to repeat as division champs just because this division is very weak, along with the Rams, Cardinals, and 49ers. They're not just there.
Yeah, it really is a weak division. Now, one last final question. Who do you think is going to come out on top in the future in these divisions? Go each division at a time.
Well, in the future, I'm going to have to go with, in the East, I'm going to have to say Dallas Cowboys, just because I think their youth is very good and they have a strong defensive core. In the North, it's kind of tough, but I'm going to have to say I think the Chicago Bears are going to have it for years to come, because that division, it just keeps on decreasing gradually. And I think the Carolina Panthers in the South, they're just a very dominant franchise right now, and they're very young too. And the West, I mean, it's not good, but if the Arizona Cardinals get a defense, which they probably won't, but since this is just a 30-minute drill, this is nothing serious, I'm going to say the Arizona Cardinals are going to come up on top of it. For years to come, Matt Leinart will lead them to the promised land.
Thank you, Marina D. Alex. It's been an honor. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, David Suntup. Today's guests, Ryan Dubin and Matt Ryan and Rudy Dubow. Now we're going to talk about the NFL. We're going to wrap up the NFL, more specifically the 2005 AFC season. Okay, guys, who was the best player in the AFC during the 2005 regular season?
I'm going to have to go with Peyton Manning. He had a great year. Last year, 2 years ago, he had a fabulous year. I mean, a lot of people didn't think he had such a great year. That's because his numbers were so great the year before, but I think he did the best out of anyone.
First of all, what an intro by David Suntup. Good job.
First time hosting. First time for Harry.
Very good job. I agree Peyton Manning was great, but I think Carson Palmer was better than him simply because he didn't have the same circumstances as Peyton, where he had a go-to receiver and a pretty decent running back. he had the guys, he had Chad Johnson, he had some support, but no one was expecting him and the Bengals to get as far as they did, and he really carried this team, and that showed in the playoffs when he got hurt and they went down. I mean, he really turned his team around, basically single-handedly out of USC.
Yeah, both great choices. You could also go for Daniel Tomlinson. Great year for the Chargers. Scored a lot of touchdowns, even though he kind of faded in a couple of games in November and December. And also, Larry Johnson stepping in for Priest Holmes. Very impressive numbers, only starting half the games. Okay, next question. Best coach in the AFC?
I'm going to have to say Bill Cowher. Led the team to a Super Bowl championship. He knew what he was doing, running the ball, playing safe, playing smart. I think he's the best coach.
He's a good coach. I like Tony Dungy because of, he went 13-0. Not many teams have done that. He almost got the coveted undefeated season, didn't quite make it, and also he had to face his son's fatal suicide. That was tragic. But he also had a great team. So I'm going to have to go with Belichick. Because Belichick went 3 out of 5 in the last Super Bowls. That's an amazing number. The owner has to be happy with that. People dream about that number. And, he lost a lot of key players. He lost Ty Law. Tom Brady really stepped it up and made up for it, but he really did a fantastic job coaching.
Guys, I'm going to have to disagree with both of you. I'm liking Mike Shanahan of the Denver Broncos. They just had a great year. 13-3 in the AFC West, tough division. They beat the Patriots in the playoffs. I was really impressed with them because I didn't expect them to go very far. I thought they could have finished possibly third in that division and missed the playoffs. And they were the second best team in the AFC, so very impressive. Okay, best team in the AFC.
I think the Colts were the best team. They had at one point in the year they had a 13-0 record. Everyone was thinking they were going to go undefeated, win the Super Bowl, but it was just tragic. Tony Dungy had faced tough times. They lost their games, and when they went to Pittsburgh playoffs, it was just an upsetting game, and they were unlucky with that. Ben Roethlisberger made that lucky tackle.
I like the Colts, but I like the Patriots more, simply because they had the experience coming in. They were the Super Bowl champs, and to get to the Super Bowl, you had to go through Gillette Field, and
Actually, I don't know. No, you have to go.
Gillette?
Actually, Gillette Stadium. No, the Patriots didn't have home field. Only through one round.
It's a term, Suntup, but
You have to go through the RCA Dome.
you had to beat the Patriots. They were fighting to regain their crown, and until they were beat, and they were the team to beat, and they really did a great job. Fighting some of the teams. Brady stepped it up. They really gave Steelers and the Colts and everyone in the AFC a really hard time winning.
Yeah, first of all, I have to go with the Colts for the regular season. They were just great. They could have got 15-1 possibly. They had a tough loss to the Chargers. But then also, you have to go to, you got to look at the Steelers. They were just great in the postseason. Okay, real quick, guys. Looking ahead to 2006, the Steelers in 2005 they surprised everyone. They were 10-6, 16. They went into Indianapolis. They won the Super Bowl. Who do you think will win in 2006? Win it all?
Everything the Super Bowl.
Well, best team in the AFC, or then you could have a Super Bowl pick if it's an NFC.
I'm still gonna go with the Colts because I think they're a very strong team. They're gonna be rebuilding. They got a new running back. Edgerrin James is still a fantastic player. They lost, but I think that they still have a great line and everything. They got a lot of things going for them. They got great receivers, and they're gonna be sticking around for a while.
Call me crazy, but I'm going to say the Titans. They may not get all the way to the championship, but I think they're going to give a pretty crazy run in the playoffs. Maybe it's just because I'm a personal fan, but I think Vince Young under Steve McNair, who I believe will stay in Tennessee to coach Vince Young, and then Londell White, I think they're going to be a tremendous offensive force in the AFC, and they're going to definitely make an impact in the playoffs.
Thanks, guys. Stick around as we recap the New York Jets 2005 season. Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, David Suntup, alongside Ryan Dubin and Andrew BX Axelband. Now we are going to recap the 2005 New York Jets football season. So, guys, the Jets, they finished 4-12, rough season, a lot of injuries. Besides the injuries, what were most of their problems?
I'd have to say, they had not a good offense. The core of the offense was missing. Chad Pennington's gone, Fiedler's injured, down to third and fourth string quarterbacks, Testaverde and Bollinger. And then on top of that, I didn't think the coaching was so good. Herman Edwards, I didn't feel he played to win most of the games. He played not to lose bad towards the middle of the season. And I think those were the main problems of the team.
Well, Dubin, do you remember his quote? You play to win the game. You don't just play to play. I think he was playing right.
I don't think so.
I don't. Look at his quote, though.
I remember that quote.
I agree with Ryan. The offense was terrible. Curtis Martin couldn't really run the ball. He couldn't have any breakout runs. He got 2 yards a gain. The wide receivers really didn't play that well. With injuries of Chad Pennington, like Testaverde had to step up. He's pretty old. Brooks Bollinger had to step it up, but they really couldn't put it together. So we have to see about next year.
Great points by both of you guys. First of all, it starts with the offensive line, the running game making the holes. And second of all, if you don't have a quarterback that can get receivers the ball, it's going to be hard for receivers to put up good numbers.
Yeah.
Next question. Okay, Jets won 4 games. Out of those 4 games, which win was the best win for the Jets?
I'm gonna have to say when they took on the Bucks, they ended their 4 or 5
Yeah, I'm not
undefeated
sure if they had
game
a
winning
bye
streak at the beginning of the season, and they did a good job there.
I would say Oakland because that's like they had like rivalries with them, and Oakland it was a pretty decently good team when they were playing them. But the Jets, they were only 4-12, but I think they could have done a little bit better than 4-12 because that was just an awful season they had.
I agree with Dubin. Definitely beating the Bucks was a huge win. Bucks were a playoff team this year. They won the NFC South, so that definitely a huge win, especially since the Bucks were undefeated. The Raiders, while the Jets played a good game, the Raiders were not a very good team. They were playing their backup quarterback. So guys, if you haven't noticed, Andrew Axelband, new and improved, new voice. Got the operation a couple weeks ago. Congratulations to Andrew.
Thank you.
New and improved Andrew Axelband. Okay, next question. Out of all the injured players for the Jets, which injury hurt the most?
I mean, it is an obvious question. You know, Chad Pennington. He was the main guy, the quarterback of the team, the leader of the team, and he just wasn't there this season. His arm, his shoulder cuff or whatever, he couldn't throw a football. It's just they can't do anything without a quarterback.
I would have to agree with Ryan again. It was definitely Chad Pennington. Without him, they go nowhere. They had to play their backups like Testaverde and Brooks Bollinger. They need Chad Pennington to be on that team the whole season in order for them to have like a decent amount of games to win. So next year he has to not get hurt.
Yeah, and you saw, like in the Jacksonville game, the game where Pennington re-injured his rotator cuff. In that game, they lost in overtime. But Chad Pennington was still able to move the ball.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the arm strength, but he was still able to run the offense. Brooks Bollinger couldn't even run the offense. The Jets didn't get past the 50 in some games where he started. They got shut out a couple of times. They just played poorly.
Yeah.
Okay, which player do you think played the best on the Jets?
Definitely not a player on offense. No offensive players really stood out. I'm gonna have to go with the defensive player, Jonathan Vilma. He did a great job. The defense wasn't too bad this year. They were a solid defense. He had about 173 tackles. So I'm gonna pick linebacker John Vilma.
I have to agree with Ryan again. Also, I would take another player, Tyler and Jonathan Vilma. Jonathan Vilma it was his second year. He had a lot of tackles, and most of the touchdowns were scored by the defensive men. A lot of interceptions. Tyler came from the Patriots. He was a very outstanding player. He played very well this season, but they really couldn't get any the games won.
Okay, guys. Moving on to 2006, the Jets will have a new coach, Eric Mangini, coming over from the Patriots. Jabrikishaw Ferguson, number 4 pick overall in the draft. Chad Pennington's back healthy. He could be their quarterback. What are your thoughts on their season for 2006? Can they get back to respect?
I'm going to say they're about a 500 team or under 500. I really can't see this team going anywhere. I personally think Herman Edwards had a lot to do with. I didn't think he did a good job with his team ruining them, but hopefully Eric Mangini will get the team resettled and hopefully a 500 season.
I can see him doing much better than they did last season. They got Eric Mangini. He comes from the Patriots. That's a very good football team. Chad Pennington's back, the number 4 pick. So we should hope to see them be good next year.
Thanks, guys. Stick around as we talk about the players of New York sports.
Welcome back to the 30-minute drill. Today we are going to be talking about the teams of New York. I'm your host, Andrew Gayo. Alongside me, Matthew, Malcolm X, Taylor, guys. So, New York sports teams, we got the Rangers, the Yankees, the Mets, the Knicks, the New York Liberty, the Giants, the Jets. We have a lot to talk about. First, we'll start off with the baseball teams, the Mets and the Yankees. What's your overall take on these two teams?
When you look at the Yankees and they got more of the star power team, the Mets really have a tremendous young base for the future. I mean, their best pitcher right now, obviously Pedro Martinez. He's getting up there in years. Tom Glavine getting up there in years. But you talk about their fielding, and it's really a young base, and the future for this team does look very bright. Now, for the Yankees, it seems like all the Yankee fans are on Alex Rodriguez, the highest paid player in baseball. And in the last few seasons, their problem has been the pitching staff. And once again, it's very inconsistent. So I think that both these teams are legit contenders this season.
Well, being a Yankee fan, I give the Mets credit for what Omar Minaya has done with this team. He's kept them young, basic, for the most part. I mean, he has some old veterans in there, such as Tom Glavine, but we look at Tom Glavine, and he's pitching maybe one of the best seasons he's had in a while since he was with the Atlanta Braves and Leo Mazzoni and Bobby Cox. But no, other pitchers on this team, obviously Pedro Martinez being Pedro Martinez, and they have a lot of youth. Obviously, Brian Bannister, he's hurt right now, but they have Ole. I forgot his last name. Ole Soler, he's been pitching pretty well. So the Mets really have a young nucleus for them. Now we look at other franchises of the Big Apple. We got the New York Hockey Rangers and the New York Islanders. I don't know much about these two teams, so I'm going to pass this over to you for your total intake on the two teams.
Well, I don't know much either, but I got to say that when you go to New York City, there is great food there.
Well,
that's all I really have to say about
we
this.
could leave hockey out of this. We're not really, we don't really know much. We got now the two football teams, the Giants and the Jets. We really talked about them in the previous segments. But going back to your topic, the cuisine of New York, what is there's restaurants that come up to mind, Morton's Steakhouse, Virgil's, good Chinese food. What is your take?
Well, nothing like going to the city and getting a great hot pretzel off the street. It's probably around 600 calories, and there's the grease. They take it straight out of straight off the floor, and they just wipe it right on your pretzel. But there's nothing like it. You go to a nice Knicks game, there's a great gyro place right across the street.
Oh, really?
You really gotta love the New York cuisine.
Yeah, I'm more into Popeye's chicken and biscuits. That's pretty good itself. But I also like going on the street and getting my portrait taken by those tourists that just tend to paint you. But off the subject now, because we gotta get serious. We look at, I don't even know. No, but the teams overall in New York, they have been a success. And most of the teams, when you have to go to New York, you have to be good for the fans to like you and to get money, which brings us to the problem. The New York Knicks, they haven't been there for the past couple of years. What is the problem with this team?
Well, it seems like they're really overpaying for these guys that don't produce. Guys like Stephon Marbury were better and more productive on previous teams, and now it seems like they just don't care if they win. And I think that relates directly to the food. They're worried more about where they're going to get their gyros after the game, where they're going to get their portraits taken, instead of let's win a game for our basketball team. So the New York Knicks got to keep their players on the court and get them away from that New York cuisine.
Yeah, it is being a problem because we look at Eddie Curry and he looks like he just ate God knows what. But no, the problem with the Knicks, you're right. It has to be financially there in disarray. Isaiah Thomas does not know what the heck he is doing. They had to get rid of him. James Dolan, I don't even want to say what I want to call him because he has really ruined this franchise. And Larry Brown, he's over the hill. They have issues. Now, just quickly, we want to do this because this is our last show, the two of us. It's been a long year.
An honor and a pleasure.
It has been a privilege, to say the least, to be on the same set as you. But the teams in New York, what did you think, other than the Yankees, the most successful and surprising team this year?
Well, you got to stick with the New York Giants. Coming into this season, they might have been least likely to win that division, and really coming out on top was tremendous. Eli Manning came into his own. Tiki Barber had a career season, and the New York Giants really have a bright future. I know they have a tough schedule this upcoming season, but if they had enough White Castle, they could overcome anything.
Matthew, I just want to thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It has been.
Yeah, and I'm going to miss you, even though I'll see you probably tomorrow in the same class. We will be right back with more 30 Minutes after this. From myself, Andrew Gayo, and Matt Taylor, we're sending it to David Suntup.
Peace.
Take care.
Welcome back to The Drill. I'm your host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Andrew the Axelband and Dave Suntup. Now we're going to talk about the players in New York over the past years. Guys, let's start off. Which player was the best in New York, in the New York area this year?
I would have to say Tiki Barber from the New York Giants. He played very well this year. He led his team to a lot of wins, and he was probably the overall best player in the New York.
Well, Mr. Axelband, great minds think alike. I have to agree with you. Tiki Barber was just outstanding for the New York Football Giants. The way he took over games during later in the year, because Eli, he was a young quarterback, first full season starting. Tiki Barber really took a load off of him, especially in the last game, that 95-yard touchdown run against Oakland. Tiki Barber was just fantastic. Got rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. He really opened the game for Tiki Barber. Tiki Barber was just absolutely fantastic.
I'm going to have to agree with you guys. I think there's no one else to pick but Tiki Barber. He did a fabulous job this year. Along with great players comes great coaches. Who was the best coach this year?
I have to say Tom Coughlin, again, New York Giants. The few past years before, they didn't really have good coaches, but last year, Tom Coughlin made the team very good, and this year he made them even better, like new plays. He controlled the defense and the offense, so I think he was the coach of the year.
Well, best coach, I have to give to Lou Lamoriello of the Devils. He really did a great job. The Devils were really out of it when he took over in January, and he helped them win the division. But the guy who did the best coaching job, I also have to give it to Tom Rennie, too, the coach of the Rangers. Everyone expected the Rangers to do terrible, finishing last in the Atlantic Division. The Rangers made the playoffs, and even though they got swept by the Devils, the Rangers saw it a great year.
Which player was the most surprising to you this season?
I got to go with another Giant, Eli Manning. Last year he didn't really have a good year. This year he surprised me a lot. He was just he was outstanding. He threw a lot of passes. They won a lot of games because of him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him next year.
I'm going to go with Nenad Krisic of the New Jersey Nets. This guy really improved from his first year at the Nets. His first year at the Nets, he didn't really shoot that well. He got into a lot of foul trouble. He wasn't as good defensively, but he really improved his outside jumper. He was really solid defensively. He played well in the playoffs, except for the second round. And the Nets were a three-man team. They had Carter, Jefferson, and Kidd. And now they're a four-man team because Krisic has really solidified his position at center.
Now, which players would be the most disappointing in New York?
It'll have to be Brandon Johnson, New York Yankees. He gets like $60 million a year. Everyone calls him the big unit. Everyone likes him, but he couldn't.
Small unit on the Yankees.
Yeah, now he's a small unit, David. But no, everyone likes him. He couldn't throw the pitches. He would always come out in the fourth inning. We need to get rid of this guy. He's terrible.
Well, he's doing a little better of late. But I have to go with Mr. Starberry, the New York Knicks. He was just awful this year for the Knicks. The Knicks are paying this guy a ton of money. He's supposed to be the face of their franchise. The Knicks are just terrible this year, 23-59. They just did absolutely nothing. And Marbury, he argued with Larry Brown, and he didn't back up his talk on the court.
Looking ahead to the 2006 season, which player would you say is going to mostly surprise people?
I got to go with another Giant, Sonoris Moss. I'm looking forward to seeing him play next year.
I'm going to go with Lastings Mills of the Mets, and also look out for Mike Pelfrey next year. He's going to crack the rotation.
Thanks, guys. Stick around as we talk about teams in New York over the past years.
Welcome back to the final segment of the 30-minute drill. I'm your host, Matt Dubow, joined today by Jared Chowdhury and David Suntup. All right, guys, this is it. This is your last word on the show, so make it good. Our topic today is Major League Baseball, the best and worst so far. Starting with that, who is the best overall player so far this year?
I'm going to have to go with Albert Pujols. His offense has been phenomenal, and his defense has been solid throughout the years. And it looks like if he keeps hitting like he is right now, it looks like he's going to break Barry Bonds' record.
I have to agree with you, Jared, but the injury that he suffered a little while ago, it's definitely a big blow. But he's just been phenomenal this year. He's totally carried the Cardinals on his back. 25 home runs and 78 RBIs or areas. That's a season for most guys, but this guy's just done that in 1/3 of the year. He's just been phenomenal, and also with the glove, he's been great defensively. He could possibly win a Gold Glove this year.
I agree. I still look for him for those awards at the end of the year. If he keeps this up, he's going to be hitting record numbers. It's going to be great. All right, to the other side of the spectrum, who's the most disappointing player so far?
I'm going to go with Randy Johnson. Everyone's talking about the big unit, how he's such a good pitcher, but right now he's not looking that great, and he's a very big disappointment.
I'm going to have to go with Adrian Beltre, third baseman on the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners signed him to a big contract before the 2005 season, 5 years, around $72 million. He's done nothing since. He's been a huge bust. He hasn't been hitting well for average. He hasn't been hitting for power. He's just been terrible. He just had one good year at the Dodgers in his contract year, and he's basically not earning his pay.
Now, players are vital. We know this. They get most of the attention. But behind the scenes, managers and coaches are extremely important as well. Who do you think was the best manager so far this season?
I'm going to take a long shot. I'm going to go with Willie Randolph. He has turned this Mets organization around with his lineups, and they're probably one of the best teams in the NL right now.
I'm going to have to go with Jim Leland, the manager of the Tigers. He was on a long hiatus. He came back to the Tigers. He's just done a great job. A lot of good young players are really hitting the baseball well, and their pitching has finally come along.
All right, since we're about 1/3 way through the season, you have a pretty good look at what teams are going to do for the rest of it. Who do you think is going to be the best?
I'm gonna have to go with the St. Louis Cardinals. They have a very powerful lineup and a strong field, and they look very, very promising this upcoming season.
Well, two teams I would watch out for. One in the National League, the New York Mets. They're really playing well, and their leadoff hitter and their fourth hitters really haven't been hitting the ball well. So I'm impressed with the Mets. And then also, I'm impressed with the Detroit Tigers in the American League. They have really been playing well. They're a young team. They're only going to get better, and I look out for them.
I think as far as the National League goes, you're definitely going to see a Mets versus the Cardinals and deep in the playoffs. I think that's definitely going to happen. It's going to be a fun match to watch.
Well, and both leagues have a lot of good teams, so it's going to be a great race during the summer.
Yep.
All right, so now what teams aren't playing up to par and are disappointing you so far?
I'm gonna go with the Kansas City Royals. They are one of the worst teams in the season right now, probably one of the worst teams ever in MLB history. And they had a bad start, and they probably have a bad finish.
Obvious pick.
I have to agree with Jared on the Kansas City Royals. No one expects them to do well. I expect them to lose 100 games, but they're just pathetic. The errors that they're making out there, like missing ground balls, not calling each other off on fly balls, dropping fly balls. Their pitching is terrible. Let's put it this way. When you hire Tom Emansky, a Little League coach, to help coach your team, and you have your team hitting off tees for batting practice, and when you have Doug McKeown as your third hitter, you know your team is not very good.
They're definitely the most pathetic team out of the MLB, but I think the Yankees are definitely struggling. They're not really playing up to their
This
expectations.
season they're doing all right, but 2005 was very disappointing. $200 million payroll, lost in the first round. You could also say the Atlanta Braves were disappointing because they always win these divisions, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs 4 straight years.
Unfortunately, nobody compares to the Royals when you're going to most disappointing, so they really don't
Yeah.
matter. Okay, guys, last question. Make it good. Last one ever on the drill. Nervous?
Not really.
Okay. What are some surprises, some things to look forward to for the rest of the season?
Actually, I'm going to look. The team is going to be the Mets. They have a very strong lineup. David Wright, one of the best third basemen I've seen so far. And they have a very good infield, and I'm looking they're going to make a run in the playoffs.
Well, I look out for the NL East race with the Mets, the Braves, and the Phillies. It's going to be a great race. Three teams that are right in it. Hopefully, if the Mets play well, if their hitting starts coming around, if their pitchers get healthy like Bannister, hopefully they could run away with this thing. I also look at the AL East, the Yankees and the Red Sox. You always talk about them. The Yankees are really playing well. Boston's playing well. I know the Yankees have had some injuries, so Sheffield, Matsui, but the young guys are really doing a good job stepping in. So those two divisions are really going to be high. And also the NL West, a lot of parity there. A lot of teams hanging around 500, so it should be interesting.
One thing left unmentioned so far in the show, I'm looking forward to watching the Houston Rockets and seeing how that Roger Clemens deal
The Astros, you mean?
Oh, the National. He's on the Nationals now?
The Houston Astros.
Astros, I'm sorry. What did I say, Rockets?
Yeah.
Basketball.
But the Astros, yeah, because that's been in the news constantly.
I kind of want to see him and his son play on the same team and pitch.
I would have
I
liked
think the whole
Yankee
Clemens thing
return.
is overrated. I mean, he just wants all the attention and stuff. We'll see how Houston does. Maybe they'll put on another run like last year where they won all those games.
We'll see. I think he'll bring them to the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to do anything really.
Well, it's going to be tough because there's two good teams in the NL East, the Mets, the Phillies, the Braves, and
There's
the
only
Cardinals,
one man.
the Brewers in the NL Central.
Thanks, guys. Good chatter. Now, that was the last tape segment of the drill this year. We'll be back after this break with some bloopers on the year. On behalf of everyone on the 30-minute drill staff, I'd like to say thank you and have a safe and happy summer. The drill will be back next season with a brand new cast, and let's just hope they could fill the shoes that we've left for them. See ya.
And we're on. 9, 10, 11. Okay.
I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew the Professor Taylor. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew the Giraffe Taylor now. So, I'm Andrew Gayo. I'm here with my guest Alex Penn. I'm your host Andrew Gayo. Matthew Royce Clayton Taylor with me. I'm Andrew Gayo, Matthew Oscar Taylor now. I'm your host Andrew Gayo. Right here alongside me, the one and only. I'm not gonna improve. I'm your host Andrew Gayo. Matthew Daylight Come and You Gotta Come Home Taylor. Matthew Urkel Taylor here. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill this week where we talk about the New York Yankees now. I'm Andrew Gayo. Matthew the Guru of Gyros Taylor. Champions of Florida Gators. I'm Andrew Gayo. Matthew the Cardboard Box Taylor now. I'm your host Shane Falco. Alongside me Bobby Boucher. I'm your host Randall Cunningham. Alongside me Mr. Reds. I'm looking like I'm dead here. I'll wait.
Well, just put me on camera.
Give me a one.
What?
Why
are you throwing? Did you hear me say I was done?
He said we were ready. Actually, why am I listening to him?
I said, this is my exact words. I said, I'm recording for when you're done doing what you're doing.
Oh, wow. Great camera shot, AJ. Who cares? You were
Hizzy for Sizzy, a.k.a. Andrew Gayo, a.k.a. Ken, productive.
Solid week. They don't yell at each other. They just get things ready. Yeah, lower your voice. No yelling at each other.
Oh, God.
Cut again.
Everyone in. Everyone in. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to the drill. I'm today's host, Ryan Dubin. Today's guests, Brian Rossman and David Suntup. Special guest today, Matt Dubow.
Who's on the sun? Who's on the sun? Oh, who's on the sun?
Well, just stand here and be like this. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's saying anyway. No, you're right. You're on the line.
Matt, how's that SAT test on Saturday? Was it sacred?
Matt Dubow is surprised in how it's Alright.
Get Jimmy Stockdale! Get Jimmy Stockdale! Get Jimmy Stockdale!
No, you're right. No, you're right. No, you're right. You're on the line.
Who's Elmer's son? He likes New Jersey Nets. Matt Dubow, you bad.
Who's Axelband?
Matt.
I know, it's just, alright.
GSW Valley.
Welcome back to this season finale edition of Patriot Pride. Patriot Pride. I messed up already.
So. Ryan, can I start whenever I'm ready? Okay.
Okay then.
How many want to start?
Ready?
Okay, Andrew Axelband is before me.
He's gonna mess up. He's
On
retarded.
and
He's retarded.
Four and a half minutes.
I can't add 4.5 minutes.
what did he say?
War can't give life, it can only take it away. Oh, war! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Nothing. Say it again. War. Oh, Lord. What is it good for? Absolutely. Nothing. Listen to me. War. It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. War. Friend only to the Undertaker. Please love and understand and tell me it's not no place for them today. They say we must fight to keep our freedom, but Lord knows there's got to be a better way. Oh, wow.